Hello, gentles and ladymen. I am joined by Dunamai, also known as the Sheep of Age of Bison. What's up?
What up, guys? I'm fine. How about you?
Not bad at all. And today we have the series finale of Season 3 of tier lists, and that is, of course, the Heavy Infantry tier list, because how could you cap off a series finale with anything except Heavy Infantry, you know? The most hotly debated fucking topic of subject of units in existence.
What dies better to skirmishers? A tier list.
Yeah. Well, what I think is that I think heavy infantry as a whole, and especially pikemen type heavy infantry that really do a lot of damage versus cavalry, have gotten more important as unit archetypes due to skirmishers doing less damage to cavalry, and that we're going to be seeing a lot more heavy infantry metas than we did before. And
I tend to agree.
that makes this list pretty interesting.
Before we start, I don't think I see the German pike here.
Yes. So I didn't take every single pike. Because that would make this list like way too long. I just took the pikes that I thought were particularly like notable, like USA, Sweden, Spain, and Malta, and then every other civilization's pikes are all clumped together in this one pike here.
All right. German pikes are. Let's get it. Let's start, but I think German pikes deserve a spot on their own.
Okay, you are free to have that opinion. I suppose that it is relevant because they don't have a musketeer, but they also have Dops, which kind of invalidate pikes. So,
All right. What do you want to start with?
I don't know. What do you want to start with? Brilliant start.
Let's go with something that's like B tier, like average.
Okay.
And
Like the British Musketeer. No, I'm kidding.
I'd actually say the Russian Musketeer is to me a B tier unit.
Really? You think the Russian Musketeer is a B tier? Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, we can put it in the B tier. It's a pretty decent spot for it. So keep in mind a couple disclaimers. If your favorite unit is on here, there's a reason for it. Please don't comment nasty things like, where's this unit? There's a reason it's not here. If you're looking for our reasoning behind why we put units in here, go visit my first video in the series that explains just that in how everything goes. It makes its way into the list. Native units are not here. Revolutionary units are not here. Also, my units, the units in the tier list are being ranked against each other, not against every unit in the game. So even if you think maybe you think that heavy infantry as overall is a bad unit class, it doesn't really matter. We're still going to have S rank units and vice versa.
Correct me if I'm.
And our whole list is scaled around the B tier, which is where we want most of our units to be, because the B tier represents good quality, solid units that do their job well.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the units are also taken into consideration within their civilization. So shipments, availability, ability to card them.
Yep. That stuff is all covered. This is just stuff I actually forgot to mention in that video. But yes, availability, age up requirements, stuff like that. Costs. It's not just stats. It's everything that we can possibly think of to create an overall average score for the unit. And yes, let's talk about the Rusket, the oh so famous Rusket. I'm generally not a big fan of Ruskets, actually, but I do recognize that they hold an important place in the Russia roster. So these guys, you train them in batches of 5 automatically, which is really cool. They have not so great stats though. They actually have reduced stats, and they have age 2 base musketeer stats in age 3 instead of age 2, which is kind of weird, but that's just how most of Russia's units work. Same with Strelets, actually, believe it or not. Strelets are age 3 based. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, they get plenty of upgrades. They're not going to be they're not going to be anything special unit wise, like stat wise. But you know, they're dirt cheap, and you can pump them out in huge swarms.
So my reasoning for the B tier would be that Russian musketeers are trash, but they're exactly worth their cost. Like, these are cheap units. You can mass them easily. You want to make a lot of strelets, and that will call for
Anti-cav.
Anti-cav, exactly.
Yeah.
And the Resket holds its own. I'm not saying it's an amazing unit by any means, but it holds its own, and it really complements well the Strelet.
Now, one of the things that I really don't like, and this actually applies to the Strelet as well, and this is a thing. This is one of the reasons that I both don't like Russia and also don't like China, is that you have to train these guys in a full batch of 5. You can't get enough resources for just one musketeer, start the batch, and then finish getting the resources to finish the batch right before it goes off. You have to wait until you gather all the resources for your batch before you can even start training. And it's one of the things that I hate about China, and it's one of the things I hate about Russia, because I just find it slows me down a lot, even if the units are cheaper per unit. You know, you still have to pay for the whole batch at once, which I find very, very egregious. And so for me personally, just for that reason alone, and my personal distaste of that mechanic, I want to put them in C tier.
That's fair enough. Heavy infantry has more importance early on in the game, would be my opinion. So that's good reasoning.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next unit. How about something like the Italian Musketeer? I don't think there's any other unit that screams B tier to me as hard as the Italian Musketeer.
All right, so that might be my first hot take of the day, but I actually think the Italian Musketeers is A+, maybe low S tier.
Really? They don't have any royal guard status, and they have cards, but not an exceptional amount.
They're not exceptional cards, indeed. The true reason why I think the Italian Musketeer is heavily underrated.
I actually really like
the Lombard,
the Italian Musketeer.
And the reason why the Lombard makes the Italian Musketeer really good is you can macro for nothing but food and have constant batch of 2 musketeers if you have full Lombard production.
No, that's true.
And you need to macro for food and a bit of wood.
I mean, you're going to run out of hunts like way faster than any other civilization if you do that, though.
That's true, but you can be temporarily pushed out of gold and still manage to produce musketeers. The other part is, and it's not really units that sees a lot of play, but the existence of the Schiavone, which is an anti-skirmisher.
Yeah, I love the Schiavone. They're great.
And the thing is, when you do a mass of musketeers and you stay in H2, people will say like, well, I'm just going to go for skirmishers because he won't have the 2 falconet shipment.
Yeah, and then the Schiavone says, ha, fuck you to crossbows.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, not because of the musketeer per se, but everything around the musketeer makes it really better. And maybe SG is a bit high because it really cannot compete.
I really don't think it's an S tier. But I will say that a majority of the I will agree that it should be in A probably, and that's mostly just because it's ranged, and this is going to become a common theme you'll see as we go through here, but ranged heavy infantry gets a hell of a lot of bonus points in our rankings. In fact, that's where almost all the musketeers are going to end up as the A tier.
Fair enough. I think it's a good point. There will be a few notable exceptions, I guess. I'm looking at you, Sorrente.
There's also something to say for Italy in that while they have an H2 crossbow unit, and they do have the Schiavone, of course, they don't have an H3 skirm like most units do. They have to wait until H4 to get their skirmisher, which means that Italy is far, far more inclined to a Muscus composition. And, you know, the Musketeer is going to be part of that. So it plays a very vital, important part in Italy's roster.
Agreed.
All right. By the way, this is just an extra Musketeer picture that is here for no reason.
Does anyone have Musketeer other than these guys?
No, I think this is every Musketeer unit in the game that I covered here.
All right.
There's actually not as many as you might think. Let's finish going through the Musketeers first. I think that's a good start.
All right.
Starting with what I think is probably the most meh of the Musketeers, except for muskets, of course. But if there's one Musketeer that I think deserves to be in the B tier, it's probably Spain. Don't get me wrong, Spain has, like, the logistician start, which leans really, really well into Musketeers, but once you get to H3, they're going to want to switch to the Rodoleros because that's where, like, all of their upgrade cards are. And they of course have Unction and all the and a bunch of other, like, standard stuff for Musketeers, and Unction makes every unit good, but, like, it makes every other unit for Spain better than it does the Musketeer. And the Musketeer is a strong Spanish unit in the Second Age. It's not the strongest Musketeer in the Second Age, though, and it really doesn't scale, I find.
So I generally agree with that statement. You'll see, at the beginning of the logistician, people were messing a lot of Musketeers because the logistician was giving a hell of a lot of food. And as time passed by, people tended to focus on the Hussar more. So I would generally agree with that because, like, the meta shifted. If you go logistician, at least, Hussar are more cardable, have more options, especially since now calf combat affects the Dragoon. So it's really not something you want to tech into necessarily in the late game. Especially since if you want heavy infantry, you might as well use the Soldado.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up next as well.
So yeah,
the Spanish Soldado is actually on this list, so we'll get a chance to talk about it later. But for its H2 utility, I think the Spanish Musketeer, I mean, it's a Musketeer in H2, you know? Not every civ has Musketeers in H2. That's important to note.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's good, it's serviceable, it's there, but it's not amazing.
It's not exceptional, but it's a very solid Musketeer because it's a Musketeer. And, you know, not every civilization gets ranged heavy infantry, and that's a big fucking deal. You know. Alright. Let's see here. Portuguese Musketeer. These are very high A tier for me. These guys are very, very solid. I believe they don't have Royal Guard, do they? Do they have Royal Guard? I think they are Royal Guard for Portugal.
Yeah, Legionario Musketeers.
Yes, so they are Royal Guard Musketeers, and even better is that all of the Musketeer upgrades share upgrades with Castadors, which is really, really cool. You know?
Yeah, because of gunpowder infantry. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So you can kind of just send one group of upgrades of upgrade cards and have them affect both your Musketeer and your Castador for a Skirm Musk composition, which is really, really cool. The problem that I find with and the reason it's kind of not getting into the S tier compared to one of the next Musketeers we're going to talk about is that yes, you can make a good Musk cast combo with very few cards, but it's outscaled. There's a couple issues with this. One is that it's completely outscaled in the pure anti-cav department by Portugal's Dragoon. And second is that if you make a all-infantry mass in Age 4, which is where you get your final upgrade card, and there's also to say that they don't get their final upgrade card until Age 4, but if you have all-infantry composition in Age 4, your army's going to be hella weak to artillery. And that's a big problem.
And in that case, you want to have Dragoon, but then
exactly,
why make Musketeers in the first place?
Exactly. But overall, they are very, very solid Musketeers. Stat-wise, they're definitely better than Italy's. I definitely think Italy's Musketeer is far more important to Italy than the Musketeer for Portugal is for Portugal, however. And so I think I'll put them right here. But
yeah, exactly. Honestly, I 100% agree.
Yeah, the Portuguese Musketeer, very high stats, very good Musketeer, very, very good stats for a Musketeer, I must say. Has no place in the military.
And this is interesting because I think it circles back to what we said at the beginning about context.
Mm-hmm.
Stat-wise, by the end of Age 4, between the British Musketeers, and my guess is British Musketeer will be much higher than this,
yes,
and the Portuguese Musketeer, there's no difference.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
It's
you
context.
Don't need the Portuguese Musketeer, but you need the British Musketeer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, context makes everything there.
Yeah, that's the next feature we're going to talk about. The British Musketeer is the only Musketeer that's going to be in S tier. I mean, there's going to be other Musketeer types, but it's the only one that's labeled Musketeer, right? British Red Coats, just as many upgrade cards as Portugal. These guys get statted the fuck out real quick. Brits have the eco to mass these guys en masse in Age 2, Age 3, Age 4, Age 5. Doesn't matter. There's always going to be lots of British Musketeers. It's like the most core thing in Britain's army. You compare them with longbows. You compare them with all sorts of good stuff, but most importantly is the British have a Royal Guard Musk, Royal Guard Huss, and then super heavy rocket combo. And it's just like the best of all worlds, you know? It makes like... Because you want to pair heavy with heavy in a composition. You want heavy infantry with heavy cavalry with heavy cannons. I mean, you want heavy cannons regardless, but you know what I mean. And the rocket is like the best heavy cannon type, and Royal Guard Huss with lots of upgrade cards work great for Britain, and then Royal Guard Musketeer with it just works best in context, and that's something that Portugal can't say.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like, honestly, I don't think that's a hot take, but if you want to learn Age of Empires 3 and like get a decent chunk of ELO, there's nothing wrong with botting every game a Manor House Boom into H2 play with Musketeers, into a Huss switch. Like, this is strong, solid fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I think I can say like Mauricio Facundo, which is one of the Spanish-speaking streamer, is a Brit main. You can watch his stream. He's really good with Brits. And a lot of the time, he's going to go for H2 musket play. And you can just see how, like, with strong fundamentals and good management of your eco, how strong and oppressive the Brit Musketeer can be.
Yeah, it really can be. There's also something to say that all of the Musketeer upgrade cards that are available in Age 2 and Age 3, you don't have to wait till Age 4 like you do with Ports. They also upgrade the Grenadier, which is also a very solid British unit. So if you want to start Grenadiers and then you decide halfway through that, oh, no, I need Musketeers. Well, good news! All the cards that you spent to upgrade your Grenadiers also work for the Musketeer. So there you go. Easy switching.
By the way, I have a question, because Grenadiers are heavy infantry. They don't feature on that list.
Yes, they are heavy infantry. However, they don't really serve the purpose of countering cavalry like most other heavy infantry do. So I opted not to include them. There's also another row of units right below this that you can't see super clearly.
All right, gotcha. I guess we are going on to the next and last Musketeer.
Yes, but before that, I'm gonna go get a cup of water. Wow, you know what? I'm fucking stupid.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay, so
Why?
I wanted to get ice water.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked to my kitchen, and I opened my fridge.
So far, so good.
And I grabbed a whole bunch of ice, and then realized that I left my cup in my room. So then I walked all the way back to my room holding a giant fucking, like, clump of ice. I just stuck it in the cup, and now my cup still has no water in it, so I'll be right back again. Okay, I am back and watered.
Then it's time to talk about the French Musketeer.
Yes, but before that, let's talk about today's sponsor, Pixel Buggy. And my video is brought to you by my good friend, Pixel Buggy. Pixel Buggy is one of my dear friends, as well as the Discord server's dear friends. He is a commission-based, for-hire digital artist, and yeah, he's just a really good guy. He specializes in emojis, emotes, chibi characters, logos, and profile pics, whatever else you might need from him. The dude knows him stuff, so support your small business, you know. I, myself, got some of his work done, and he's the one who made my new logo for my YouTube channel. He also made a banner that I have used occasionally for one or two of my videos, but really the big thing that I wanted his work for was the logo for the channel. And I mean, look how good my logo looks. If you just scroll down from this video or exit full screen mode, then you'll see it. But yeah, this is really good work, and I used to do a lot of art, and I have a very particular style, and I generally like to do a lot of my own art on the channel, but for something as important as branding and drawing people in, you can't get much better than somebody who does this professionally, you know, and that is what Pixel Buggy provides. Like I said, just look how refined my logo looks. Now, Pixel can be reached via the Discord server, messaged directly on Discord through the link in the description, or you can just go straight to his custom website, which is also linked in the description. Thank you, Pixel Buggy, for sponsoring, and now back to the video. French Musketeer! Let's get to it. So yeah, the French Musketeer is it's a Musketeer. They have upgrade cards for them, not a whole lot, not as many as some of the others. They're not Royal Guard. They pair well with Heavy Cav, and, you know, France has really good Heavy Cavs, so it's a good Musketeer. I don't see anything particularly special about it, though. Do you?
So I would have put it in A tier, maybe high B tier compared to Spain. It has more sense to make Musketeers as France rather than Spain.
Yes, that's true.
But stuff has changed because they got a new card.
Yes,
and boy, what a card!
That. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. So yeah, France got
French
a new card
Royal Army
in Age 3. I think it's locked too, right?
Yes.
That allows their standard Musketeers to get promotions, which is normally a feature only usable on limited units, like natives or mercenaries. But no, this is just a standard line infantry Musketeer that can get promotions. It's pretty crazy. No, the gains on the promotions are pretty large, too.
Yeah, so promotion in this game work in a way like upgrade cannot beat, because upgrade scale off of your base stats. For example, you want to get veterancy upgrade on a Musketeer, you get plus 30 health and plus 4.6 damage, because you get plus 20% off of base health and base HP.
But promotions are like aura upgrades in that they scale off of your current stats.
Exactly. And the thing is, the current stat for the promotion in the level 3 promotion, so if a Musketeer kills 3 other units, is plus 25% HP and damage.
Yeah,
which is
insane.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Now, the caveat to that, of course, is that very few of your Musketeers are ever going to be gold rated like that. And you're going to lose a lot of Musketeers for every one that you get that's gold. Because you need to go through a lot of combat and live to tell the tale in order to do that.
So that is true. So I don't know if that makes them like high A tier or low A tier, but I would put them in A tier just because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm putting them there anyways. Low A tier for sure, though. The thing about France,
honestly,
this I think sums up France really, really well. Everything about France is A tier. They are just the solid base civilization with no unique mechanics, and they're just whatever you want to do, they can do it well at A tier or higher. But they can't do anything at S tier except for cruisers.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think sums up the France very, very perfectly. I think every single France unit that we've listed here has been A tier, except for the Crusader, which was S.
Fair enough. And something also to keep in mind is France has this super high skill ceiling. And this card also plays into that. Because if you go, for example, for, I don't know, priest or surgeon, you heal up your veteran, your promoted units. You put cuirassier in front of them. And imagine you get into this dream death ball of 50 gold muskets.
I mean, that's never going to happen in a real game.
That's never going to happen.
Let's
be honest.
The muskets, the promotions, the thing about promotions, and one of the reasons I really don't like promotions overall on my units, is that they are not reliably consistent. Yes, you will get promotions when you fight, but there's no way to control when your promoted unit is going to get shot by your enemy's musketeer, by your enemy's skirmisher, you know? And I generally prefer group-wide, army-wide upgrades, but the fact that you can send the promotion upgrade for your musketeer army and see zero difference in your musketeer's stats until they start fighting and start killing things, which I would rather have the higher stats at the beginning of the fight, you know, and it's one of the reasons I don't like promotions overall, is the inconsistency of it, you know. But that's just me.
That's fair enough.
That's just me. I mean, I would rather have promotions than not having any upgrades, but I would rather have standard upgrades than promotions.
Mm-hmm. That's fair enough.
Alright. Let's see, what's a unit you want to talk about here?
Maybe an interesting one, the Gunslinger from USA.
Yeah,
next to the Halberdiers.
What's about the Gunslinger and the Doppelsoldner? Sorry, where is it? The Gunslinger and the Desperado.
Yeah,
Desperado. Where's the Desperado?
Oh, yeah. Next to the Doppelsoldner.
Next to the Dops.
Top rank, middle of top rank.
Gotcha, thank you. So yeah, let's spot these together because they are literally the exact same unit. They have the exact same stat, they have the exact same cost, they have the exact same charged action. They are identical units. Between the two, USA's is better. For sure.
Yes.
Because Mexico's, if you want to go outlaws for Mexico, you're probably going to do a Baja Revolts and do a rush with outlaws, right? But when you do that, what are you going to make instead? What are you going to make? The Doppelsoldner or the other one, the filibusters? You're gonna make the filibusters because they have much better siege, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, on the other hand, the USA's, you're also going to have an issue where going to Baja Revolt is the only way you can get a outlaw combat card, right? Whereas for USA, they don't have an outlaw combat card, but what they do have is US Army, which affects all heavy infantry and can upgrade them that way just naturally by going to age 3. And then also once they get to age 5, they get the New York upgrade, which the Desperados do not get. And so with that, the Gunslinger is far more consistent, far easier to use, and scales far better than the Desperado does, despite being literally the exact same unit, basically, with a different picture.
Mm-hmm. So,
however, I will say the Desperado has an S tier portrait. If we were judging by portraits alone, Desperado would be up there.
Oh, definitely. This sombrero, give me that S tier right away.
Now, there is something to be said that, like...
Go ahead.
The Gunslinger can be kind of seen as, like, made irrelevant because of the existence of the regular, but it's really not. Because if you're going outlaws, you're going to be making these over the regulars because, you know, the regulars cost food, and if you're going outlaws, you have a coin economy, so it still holds its own niche. And, in fact, the Desperado actually has a very high, like, a very high DPS, even higher than the regular, which is higher than that of a standard musketeer. But yeah, I really like the Gunslinger. I don't really like the Desperado that much.
So honestly, I think the Desperado is a seriously underrated unit because of one card. And I think you know the card, and it's Oklahoma Black Mesa.
You're talking about Desperados for Mexico. The
gun.
I was actually about to bring that up if you didn't. But yeah, Oklahoma Black Mesa allows you to gather at the same rate as a base settler with gunslingers. It's great. It's saved my economy tons of times before. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
But you can go Advanced Saloon and have 3 batch trading TC for miners.
Yeah, it's very true.
This is a Portuguese main wet dream. And the fact that no one uses this card is a tragedy, except you. Is a tragedy because it was buffed again and again and again. And
it used to be utter shit. I used to make fun of the card, and then they had to nerf it 3 times. I'm like, okay, now it's good. They had to buff it like 3 times. Like, okay, now it's good.
And the fact that it costs like 200,
I think now. Yeah, 200.
Like you get 5 Musketeers. Let's say Musketeer, but they're better than Musketeers.
Yeah, you
get also 5 villagers.
Yeah, you get 5 Musketeers / settlers and a coal mine with 2,000 coin in it, which gathers twice as fast.
And from now on, your main heavy infantry, if you're going outlaws, can mine gold. Sign me up.
Yeah. There's also something to be said that these guys are these guys are going to be easily paired with the Alhoot, which is USA's best skirmisher unit, I think. I think the Alhoot is probably the best infantry unit overall that USA has. I think.
That's a hot take, but all right. I'll leave you to it.
Except for Marines, obviously. Except for Marines. But like the best standard trainable unit. Like you have to see my skirmisher tier list, man. I like praise the shit out of these things. Out of the Alhoot. But the Gunslinger is a very easy pair with the Alhoot. And yeah, as you were saying, like this is something I've done before, and it's actually in one of my videos. I might link it in the description or put a card in this section of the video. But I had a game really recently in a 4v4 where me and my team set up a forward base, and I put like one of my forward saloons there and started training these gunslingers. And I shipped all 3 coal mines that I got between Oklahoma Black Mesa and Kentucky coalfields to the forward base and kind of used them like a wall. Because it's basically an indestructible wall, right? And then I just made that kind of my centerpiece for the economy. And then while this was happening, this auto player came around the edge of the map and completely leveled my base. And I was down to 16 villagers, and it didn't matter because all of my eco was focused in the center just because my entire eco was based around gunslingers. And so it can really save your ass. And, right after that, the enemy pushed into our forward base. They found my settlers, or they found my miners, thought they were settlers, and tried firing them. And then, lo and behold, the settlers fired back, and they all died.
Unfortunate.
It was a very entertaining game. I had a lot of fun with that one. But yeah,
I think it was the one with Kinda Cat, right?
Yes, I think Kinda Cat was there. It was a 4v4, and everybody on our team was in a voice chat together. They were all in the Sunbros Discord. But yeah, I think very, very highly of the Gunslinger. Not so much with the Desperado. I think the Gunslinger is like right here. And I think the Desperado is like here.
100% agree with the Desperado. I would go as far as to say low S tier for the Desperado. I think he's absolutely underrated because of
you keep saying Desperado.
The Black Mesa card. The Gunslinger, I mean, sorry.
No, I don't think the Desperado... I did it too. I don't think the Gunslinger is better than the Alhoot, is the thing. And the Alhoot is like the cornerstone of USA's outlaw play in terms of raw fighting power. Like you really have to like check out some of the stuff I've done on Alhoots recently. But like Alhoots just shred everything. They can shred masses of Yumi archers in the late game. They can shred horde after horde of Strelets. It's all on my channel. It's great. But yeah, I think the Gunslinger is a great pairing for the Alhoots. And it also has the Oklahoma Black Mesa ability, and so there's it also scales into the end game better than Cowboys, I think. And yeah, I think I love this unit. I have a lot to say regarding the USA stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's just gonna happen.
Yeah,
it's my main civ.
Yeah, I agree. I'm surprised actually that you don't put it higher, because I really think Oklahoma Black Mesa could actually bring back Outlaw USA as a meta.
I mean, I've done everything I could to bring back that meta, given all my USA videos lately, and I think they're at their best, right? And yeah, I would absolutely put, like, the Gunslingers could be S tier, but I'm trying to be extremely stingy with my S tier rankings. I'm trying to have as few units as possible be S tier and D tier. And
okay,
there's got to be a cut somewhere, and I don't think the Gunslinger is British Musketeer quality. I think it's close. I think it's damn close. I think it's going to be at the top, towards the top of A tier with this Italian.
Maybe better than the Italian, actually. Yeah.
In fact, I think it was better than the Italian, honestly.
Yeah.
They're so very comparable, though. But yeah, I have to make a cut somewhere, and I can't. The thing is, USA doesn't get their outlaw population reduction card until age 4, and I can't justify putting a 4-pop Musketeer in age 3 into an S tier class.
That is a good argument. Yeah, that's a good point. And
because
even for the Mexican one,
the Gunslingers are never population efficient. Even when they cost 2 pop, they're still like really high DPS compared to other Musketeers. But they ain't no Soldado, and Soldados are 2 pop, right?
Fair enough.
That's one of the, but on the other hand, the Alhoot is extremely pop efficient, and they are absolutely worth 2 pop.
Mm-hmm.
Given
this is
how ridiculous their fighting stats get.
A tier because it's a good transition unit. Like, you can gather gold on the map and then switch to something else, but you won't get them like until late age 5, 1 hour into the game. Like, I agree with that.
Oh, I just make Alhoots right from the second age, dude. They have 30 base damage with skirmisher multipliers. It's nuts.
Oh no! I meant the. I'm so confused with the guy you're hovering over.
Oh, Gunslingers.
Mr. Pistol Guy.
We're getting all the names mixed up. It's fine. It's fine.
And yeah, for Mexico, C tier is fine. Maybe even D. Like,
Yeah, there's Desperados do have their uses for Mexico, but they're few and far between. You know.
Yep. All right.
All right, we've.
What do you want to talk about next?
Oh, that's a damn good question.
Maybe Giscania?
Yeah, I was thinking Giscania as well.
Let's go with Musketeers.
Yeah, we'll go through all the range stuff first. Spoiler alert, basically none of them are going to be D tier because they're ranged. And that's just too big of a thing to let go.
Fair enough. I'd
say
A tier.
I don't play a whole lot of Ethiopia. I know that the Giscania are kind of like glass cannons, basically. Less HP, more damage compared to other Musketeers. Don't they have faster fire rate if you're closer to them as well?
Yes.
Yes, these guys are pretty high DPS, if I'm not mistaken. But they don't have high bursts like Musketeers do, so they're going to lose in initial volleys, right?
No. That's the thing, because they attack higher the closer you are, but they get 13 range. So they shoot first.
Yes, but their shot is going to be... That's a 1 range difference, and their shot is going to be half that of a normal Musketeer.
Not necessarily half. I mean, it's just... Let me just
12 to 23 is barely more than half. Aren't they 12 at 1.5 at base?
Oh, no, it's not 1.5. It's a 3 speed attacking unit.
Oh, okay.
Let me just...
Yeah, shows how little I know about the Giscania. I really don't play Ethiopia that much.
So in terms of range damage, they actually have 24.
Oh, okay. Yeah, never mind then. I take back everything I said. The Geskenia is really fucking good. I don't know their upgradability. I imagine they're decently upgradable, though. I know Ethiopia has some very strong upgrades to them.
So attack and HP in H2, and attack again in H4. So it's a really decent unit.
Mm-hmm.
However, I
will say
think
they probably get outscaled by Javelin Riders in the end game, right? Especially when you pair them with the Neftenia. Especially when you pair them with the Neftenia.
We're in a Portuguese situation.
You're
an insane unit.
You're Mr. Robotic right now. You're Mr. Robotic right now.
Oh, sorry about that.
But yeah,
is it better?
You might want to disconnect and reconnect to the call, or unplug and replug your mic.
Is it better now?
Much better. Immediately noticeable.
All right, so we're in a Portuguese Musketeer situation. This is an insane unit that Ethiopia doesn't need.
And I actually have seen late game Neftenia. Late game Geskenia, and it's paired with the Neftenia. And it was especially effective against me because I was playing Aztec, and Aztec have no cannons. It's actually one of the big issues with Aztec is Aztec lack a unit that is good against all infantry. That game, I pretty much ended up just massing Arrow Knights and hiding behind my Explorer all day.
Fair enough.
I actually won that game too.
I'd say they have their uses. Like if you are against a civilization, for example, Aztec, that tends to use a lot of hand infantry, the Geskenia is insane.
Yeah.
Because they will attack faster, the back rank, and that's the insane thing about Geskenia. Because the attack speed scale, right, with the distance, the back row will shoot after the front row, and it will make sure that you don't overkill. And that is, I would say, a hidden micro ability of Geskenia that makes it superb against hand infantry. Like, if you have hand infantry, this unit is insane.
Yeah.
You pair it with Shotel Warriors if you have like skirmishers, and that's super good. But then why would you make that? When you can make one of the most pop efficient goons in the game and one of the best skirmishers in the game? Like, why would you go Musketeers when you have honestly one of the best skirm goons in the game?
Mm-hmm. And for the early game, there is something to be said about the fact that the Javelin Rider is not going to be insane yet in H2, and it is available in H2, which is amazing. And the Geskenia might be easier to afford in the early game because it's food wood, and a lot of early game units are made better by the fact that they're food wood. Food wood generally tends to be better in the early game, and then food coin tends to be better in the late game. Which is actually quite convenient because we were just mentioning about how this game this unit doesn't really hold a place in the late game, but it will in the early game because it's going to provide a lot of much needed early game siege.
Yes, that siege is really good
because it's a heavy infantry, and most of these units will perform that function just as well. But yeah, we are in a situation here where it's the Portuguese situation where you have a very solid unit. There's no reason to use it past H3. Or H3 onwards.
I mean, if you like it, do it anyway.
You could do it anyways. But you're going to end with a skirm musk composition that's weak to artillery. Exactly the same position as Portuguese. You're really right. I never realized there were so many similarities between Portugal and Ethiopia, but I guess there are quite a few.
They actually had diplomatic relation really early on, historically, if I remember correctly.
I think Ethiopia can even ally with Portugal as one of their H-ups, too.
Yes. Which gives you the cannoneer.
If I'm not mistaken.
Bestiero trainable at the war camp, and the ability to train cannoneers natively without attack at the palace.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go ahead and put in an easy S tier, shall we?
Let's go.
The Ashigaru Musketeer.
Yep. I'd even put it above the Brit one, but that's debatable.
I don't know. I think the Royal Guard Huss are going to be better than. Well, no, because I actually rated the Naginata Rider higher than the Royal Guard Huss in the cavalry tier. So you might be right about that, but there's something to be said about rockets, and Japan has talked about the Flaming Arrow, which is not quite as good.
True. Just to say, like, in how many Japanese games will you see 0 Ashigaru Musketeer? Like, this is why it's such an easy S tier. Like, maybe some from time to time you'll see Yumi walls, but that's all. Like, after that, it's Ashigaru.
I actually had a game very, very recently where all the opponent did was go hardcore treaty mode Japan into Yumi walls. No Ashigaru. And you know,
that's the worst kind of Japan mains.
You know how, and we ended up winning that game. You want to know how?
Why?
Because this Yumi archers lost in a shootout against Alhoots.
Dear God!
Because Alhoots are that insane.
Get DE'd.
That bullshit is the reason I say that like Alhoots are the best USA most infantry aside from Minutemen.
Holy cow. Yeah, beating Yumi is no easy feat. That's for sure.
They shredded them. It wasn't even close. Anyways, yeah, Ashigaru. Higher bases, 180 HP. That's the same as a veteran musketeer at age 2 base level, which is super good. They don't have very many upgrade cards, but they're carried by higher base HP. Higher base damage at 25, and the real kicker of it all is 4.5 base speed, or 170 HP, not 180, my bad. I know you're probably about to correct me there, but the reason that the Ashigaru are so feared is because of their 4.5 base speed. That's all it is. They can just chase most of these other units. Now, what I will say is that 4.25 speed musketeers are starting to become more common. And then when you combine that with military drummers and whatever other speed increase that a lot of the older civilizations are getting now in addition to what they have before, the 4.5 of the Ashigaru is not quite as scary, although they can get faster with the Shogunate, but that upgrade can be destroyed. But they are no longer the king of speed. That actually goes to the Sentinel right now, in terms of fast musketeers.
And the Carolean.
And Sentinels and Caroleans are both faster than Ashigaru. Not at base level, but once they get upgrades, at the very least.
You everything. It's fast. It's good.
You're robot again. You're robot again.
And I'm back.
Hey, you're fixed.
You said everything, essentially. It's fast, it's good, it's in your base, it's annoying, it's S tier.
It's being trained from a cavalry unit in the back by your settlers. In batches of 10?
Yes. Yes.
Fuck that mechanic!
I mean, I don't want to say stuff in your videos, but please remove this ability to train units. Oh God! I mean, I said it in the forums. I think an easy fix would be to get them the hero tag, so they would get countered by spies.
I fully agree with that. Like the shoguns and the daimyos should all have the hero tag. I don't know why they don't. The fucking Lamb of the Lords has the hero tag. Why the hell does fucking Tokugawa not?
I mean, it's not like he was a hero in history, right?
It's not like he's the main character for your civilization, right?
I mean, I didn't know that Lamb of the Lord had the hero tag, actually. You told me a sheep fact. Holy cow. All right. On to the next, I guess, because nothing to say other than S tier on the Ashigaru.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and throw in another S tier. We're going to be doing a fair bit of this, actually. It's just throwing a couple things in S tier and talking and gushing about them.
Mm-hmm.
Our next S tier, and probably the lowest on the S tier, Sepoy.
Disagree. They got nerfed.
I mean, they got nerfed like over 2 years ago at this point. So Sepoy, for reference, are the best base statted musketeer, one pop musketeer. Now they do get beat at base level by sentinels, but those are 2 pop musketeers, so they don't count for that relation. But what used to make the Sepoy, what made the Sepoy insane was that its base HP used to be 190, which was just high enough that it would take 3 shots instead of 2 shots for a fully fledged town center to kill. But that's not the case because they got lowered to 180, and a town center can do 90 damage at base level at maximum, so you can kill them in 2 shots. That said, however, India can easily afford these guys with 0 issues, because once you get your 2 wood trickles, then you can focus your whole economy on just like military production. They pop out of the fucking aggro fort that's right outside your base. That you get 2 of them for aging up with the Agra, in fact, and they are absolute monsters in musketeer shootouts in the second age. And for just base stats alone, just for their base stats alone, these guys will scale very well into the late game, even without upgrades, which they do have now, and they didn't before, but they do now. And there's so much wonderful about the Sepoy. I feel like they did get nerfed like a year and a half ago to have lower HP, but now they have a lot more upgrade cards than they used to, and there should be something to said about that. Not to mention, Mansabdars are just going to scale everything really hard once you get to that point as well, and like the Sepoy is like. Sepoy will beat like British Musketeers pound for pound in like every single age. The only reason the British Musketeer is ranked higher is because it pairs with the Hussar and the Rocket. And as much as I love the Mahout, I do think the British Hussar is better. Not stat wise and pound for pound, obviously, but population wise and cost wise.
All right, so I'm sorry because I feel like I'm going to drop a bombshell on this one, but they got nerfed recently again, and they got their cav multiplier changed. And today, I kid you not, they do the same amount of damage to cav as a Rusket.
Yes, but they do have a higher base damage, so they do a higher damage to everything else in melee as well.
That is true, but come on, a Rusket's damage, that's rough for a unit that costs so much. Like, I mean, in a shootout on Musketeers, like, you go in melee, you shred everything but the thing you're supposed to shred.
I mean, yeah, but
that feels rough.
You don't make Sepoy for the countering cavalry. You used to, granted, because they used to have a base damage of 45 against cavalry.
That was ridiculous.
But you used to. They used to be better than pikemen. I will say that they are definitely less useful against cavalry now. But when you make Sepoy, you generally don't make them for anti-cav purposes. You make them for beefy frontline musketeer purposes, and they do that job better than any other beefy frontline musketeer.
So you're going with the Janissary argument, like,
yes,
I don't care if I don't counter cav. I just want a haymaker.
Exactly. And I think the Sepoy is a much better haymaker than the Janissary. Because it has almost as much HP, but it has way more attack.
I guess the Sepoy is excellent, so I'm fine with S tier. I just really want to communicate the fact that they're not the like end all be all they used to be, honestly.
I can agree with that. And actually, I was going to bring up the Repugnant being buffed and actually made relevant as an anti-cav unit. And so yes. I think we will, in honor of that, I think we will put the Sepoy down here so that we can talk about the Repugnant. Because let's talk about the Repugnant real quickly instead of the rest of the Musketeers, because we just brought them up in context with the Sepoy.
Mm-hmm.
So the Repugnant used to be a unit that had no purpose. It's like a Rodolero, but it's slower than a Rodolero, and also it did less damage to cavalry than the Sepoy.
Oh yeah, it was D tier material, like 100%.
Yeah, it was down here. But then but then they did a couple things to make the Repugnant more relevant. One, they nerfed Sepoy's anti-cavalry abilities, like you said, and two, and what I will say is that when it comes to like shootout and being a haymaker, I do think the Sepoy is up here, right? But because it lost its anti-cav role, in addition to that, it's down here. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to the Sepoy being less useful against the cavalry, they massively buffed the Repugnant. The cost for these guys have been reduced, and their attack and attack speed have been raised. And these guys, let me tell you what, these guys shred cavalry now. They are a little bit more expensive than pikemen. They are also faster than pikemen. You know, they are, but something of note is that they are a food wood unit, which, while in most cases is really bad, is not so the case for India. And that's because they have, one, they have a wood-based economy, and two, because you can make a solid heavy infantry, heavy cavalry pairing by making a composition of Repugnants and Mahouts. And wouldn't you know it, they actually have upgrade card synergy, because Repugnant's combat card in Age 2, that gives them a 30% attack boost, by the way, in Age 2. Also gives Mahouts a 15% boost as well. So there's actually quite a bit of synergy with the Repugnant and Mahout, and India players have yet to realize this unit composition is like actually really viable now. I think it's a sleeper thing. I think it's a sleeper hit, and a lot of people haven't realized it yet.
100% agree with you.
It doesn't help that I haven't actually made a video on it. I probably should. But yeah, the Repugnant Mahout combo is real now. It really is. You can go all melee for India, and it's great. Throw in some Yarumi in there, why not, you know? Just go more melee with units that shouldn't be.
Honestly, I have seen India player go nothing but Rajput, like in an all-in rush variation of the 10-10, and making it work. Mm-hmm. This is how good the Rajput is now. So
it's a sleeper hit for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree with 80.
I think it's like right here.
Like for a melee unit, that's huge.
Yes. And I honestly need to make a video on the Repugnant Mahout combo, because it's so underrated and people don't realize it yet. People don't realize it's a thing yet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, let's...
Do you want to go on the Musks?
Yeah, let's finish up the Musks. We took a break for the Repugnant because it was in the context with the Sepoy, but yeah, let's finish up the Musks. Next S tier units. The Karolian.
Yep, nothing else to say.
Now, a lot of people are like, but the Karolian's been nerfed. So what? It's been nerfed like 4 times. It's still an S tier unit.
I'd say it's been nerfed from S plus Omega Lol tier to just regular S.
I know. It's been nerfed almost as hard as the Inquisitor, but the keyword is almost, meaning it's still S. Yeah.
Interesting thing. It works a bit in reverse from the normal Musketeers. Like,
yes, it does.
With Japan and Brits, you want to open with mosques and like be it your main pressure. I see a lot of Swedish players having more success opening with Huss to slowly build up the mass, because they don't counter cav in melee, so you need to have the range massing effect to really be effective against cav.
Yes, so the thing
but once you get there, holy cow.
So the thing about Karolians is they have their cavalry multiplier attached to their range attack instead of their melee, and their melee attack, by the way, is very, very high. It's a base of 20, which is much higher than pretty much anything here.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely among the highest of like base Age 2 attack for melee, and because they have the Karolian charge ability as well, even though they do lose to other Musketeers in shootouts, you can often get wins in small clusters against other Musketeers anyways, just by charging in before they realize you're there and getting into melee where your units will shred. However, in small groups, in small batches of 5, they will lose against Musketeers. because they just don't have that same DPS in melee, so then the Hussars can close in on them. But when you have a mass of Corolians, that ranged multiplier, which doesn't give you individually as much damage as a melee multiplier might, suddenly is way better, because you, instead of having only one line on the front row being able to get a multiplier against the cavalry that are in melee with them, and then everybody else shooting without the multiplier, like what happens with regular Musketeers, it's the reverse, where you have only your front line of units not having a multiplier, and 80% of your troops behind them opening fire with the multiplier. And as a result, the Corolian it is a strange unit that loses in shootouts against other Musketeers, and is also not super great at countering cavalry in melee, and especially in Age 2, because you're not going to have that big of a mass yet. But as soon as you hit Age 3 and you start to hit a critical mass and you start to get upgrades for them, they completely switch and go from being a very solid, if not quite as good as the others, Musketeer, to by and large the best Musketeer in the game, plus having ranged resistance.
I need to say something else about the Corolian, because there is a lot of people that say Sweden doesn't have a counter to goons, because they don't have skirmishes. So the skirmishes, they deal at base damage, 15 damage, times 1.5 against light cav, because it's 2 times 0.75.
Interestingly enough, whenever I do testing, they tend to just do 2 times. For whatever
maybe
reason,
they changed it.
For whatever reason, that negative all cavalry multiplier doesn't apply to heavy. To light infantry. Like, it balances out enough so that they do 2 times. I figured this out when testing with Eagle Runners, actually, and then did some testing on my own with Dragoons, and saw that it was the same.
So they do 2 times now? Oh, that's interesting, because
they
I'm about to say something false.
Yeah, they seem to have always done that, as far as I can tell. Even if the multiplier said it was all cavalry, it never really applied to goons. As far as I can tell in my testing.
I stand corrected then. I was about to say Corolians deal a pretty decent hunk of damage to Dragoons. And the thing is, with the snaplock upgrades, you don't have the same problem as other Musketeers, because other Musketeers get outranged. So the Goon then soft counter Musketeers, but that's not the case for the Corolian. The Corolian has 15 range and can outrange all the, I would say, standard Dragoons, not mentioning, the Portuguese Dragoon or the German War Wagon, stuff like that.
The Hauda.
And it's a soft counter to Dragoon. It really reverses the soft counter.
Yeah, it is rough for Sweden, though, because they do still don't have a perfect counter to goons. Like, the Corolian does a good job, but it ain't no skirmisher.
Because you cannot have, like, the back row firing and stuff like that, but you can, like, buy time, or you can, by the way, make crossbows, but people, for some reason, refuse to make crossbow with Sweden. Except Madonna, by the way, shout out to Madonna, who made crossbow with Sweden. And this unit is really good. Like, try it out against Goon. Maybe it's not perfect, but then whenever you lose a Corolian and they kill a Goon, you're making a good trade. Like a really good trade, actually an insane one.
That's true.
Because it's 100 resource versus like 180.
That's true. But a Dragoon, I think, is going to win in the shootout against Corolians for a little bit. Their base stats are so high. 22 base damage, 200 base health. That's higher than both the Corolians' base damage and base health, and then Dragoons also have range resistance to start.
That is true, but I mean, there are 2 pop, so you really need to compare 2 Corolians with 1 Dragoon.
Yes, but you could also make the argument that if you were to compare resource equally instead of population, then Dragoons would win out.
That's fair enough.
All right, let's see here. Next Musketeer on the chopping block, and our list is going to appear very A rank stacked, and that's just because we're going over Musketeers first. It'll be a lot more equal out once we go down the line.
Don't worry, the King Pikemen is coming.
The what now?
The King Pikemen.
Yeah.
The Chinese pikemen. Don't worry, it's coming. D tier, here we come.
Hey, I actually like the Guang pikemen. It's better than the Chengdao, I think.
Oh. Ooh, interesting. But go on with the mask.
Alright, let's see. Let's talk about a con for Hausa. I used to not think anything of these guys. McLeese sure showed me wrong. McLeese single-handedly made me terrified of this unit. It's a musketeer that shadow attacks for Hausa that also has area of effect on its range attack. I mean, what more do you need to say?
I can add something. If you want to, you can make it cheaper with the card that now enhances, I think it's Loyal Warriors. You can get in 15% cheaper and have it like essentially as cheap as British Musketeers.
I mean, the Icon perform well even against skirmishers because of the area of effect and splash that they have. It's kind of nuts. I remember exactly one game where I really took it, where I really took the lead in the military department and completely fucked McLeave's Icon mass. And that was the tournament game where I did a USA meme settler push. I think you casted that game, actually. Do you remember that? Or was it not you?
I think I watched that game, but I don't think I casted it.
That game was something else, because, suddenly your Icon don't really do much when they're up against people with 350 hit points and 20% range res. But... The Icon will win against other Musketeers. They shadow tech. They don't have as many upgrade cards as many of the other Musketeers do, but they shadow tech and they perform well against skirmishers, which normally counter them. So there really is not much else to say. I think the Icon is very high A tier. Their availability requires a fair bit of investment in the age shop department in order to get them, which I think does kind of lower them just a teensy bit, but I would even consider putting them in S tier, honestly.
I would too, honestly. What you said about the availability is interesting. I didn't consider that. You need a card.
Yeah, it's not. It is a card, but it's not that big of a deal, Because
it also brings you a can, so yeah. So if we don't consider that availability isn't that much of a problem, they essentially will beat any one pop musketeer on this list, on en masse.
Because we need to talk about Icon under the context that somebody is going for Icon, and in that regards, their availability is not as bad as some of the other units that are here. Like Maceman is a unit that really suffers in availability. For example.
Oh yeah.
Like by comparison, if you are going with a strategy and have the intention of going Icon, it's easy. You just send a card.
Yeah, you can even ally with Akans to have the native version of Akan that doesn't cost pop and the normal version that costs pop.
Yep, that is very true.
Yeah, really a strong staple unit from Hausa, even if they don't get it from the get-go, which is, funny.
Just weird, because they have, no combat cards, but it doesn't matter. They're just so good at base level.
Thank God they don't, by the way.
Yeah. Alright, up next, we have the Bolus Warrior. Wait, am I mistaken? Is this guy this guy used to be a heavy infantry. Is he still a heavy infantry, or did they rework him into...
I think he is, yeah, but I think you're missing another musketeer.
Really?
Or maybe you just want to go to Bolas. You have the regular in there.
I mean, yeah, there's other musketeers here. I'm going through the musketeers as we go.
Oh, all right. Yeah. It's kind of a musketeer, the Bola. You're right.
Is it a heavy infantry still, though? I have heard tales that this unit is now a range shock infantry like the ERK.
Oh, really? Let me double check that on the wiki.
The wiki is going to have false, outdated information no matter what you do.
All right, let me just start the game.
Yeah, I'd pull up the game itself. We'll talk about the Bolus Warrior momentarily, guys. Let's talk about the regular next while we wait. USA's regular. I like this guy. It's more expensive than a normal Musk, being that it's 50 food, 55 coin, I believe, or 55 food, 50 coin. However, I actually prefer the cost over 75.25 because USA has a lot of coin trickle abilities, and you know what? Being a little bit more evenly weighted to food coin means you're not going to run out of hunts nearly as fast as the British do, and god damn, the British run out of hunts fast. That's not as big of an issue with the USA though. The regulars have the same base HP and movement speed as most other musketeers, but they have a higher base range of 14, which is fantastic. And they also have a higher base damage of 25 compared to a normal musketeer's 24. Or 23, I mean. 23. And yeah, I mean, the regular is just a really good unit overall. It gets the the U.S. Army card. You can fight under the flag. These guys have because of the flag, these guys also train very quickly, which it goes for most USA units out there, you know? I mean, yeah, there's really not a lot to say about it other than good. Unit good.
Super strong unit. There's nothing wrong with going like Musk Haas with USA, honestly.
I think the regular it's about on par, I think, with Portugal's musket, because although it is weaker than Portugal's musket stat for stat, you can get upgrades on it easier because Springfield Armory is such a good card in H2 for USA. And also because it holds a more important place in the army, even if it is worse stat-wise than triple-carded Royal Guard Musk, you know?
Yeah, keep in mind that these guys have 14 range.
Yeah, 14 range.
So the second line will be able to fire when only the first line will be able to fire for ports, and that is actually a big deal. Because it doesn't matter that your Portuguese musketeer has like 56 attack in H5. Like, if he's not shooting, he has 0 attack.
I still find it funny that we're rating the regular lower than the gunslinger, but it is apt because I also said the Alhoot was the best USA skirmisher. So there it is.
I mean, there's funky stuff going on because we also rated the economic potential of the gunslinger. Because let's face it, just a raw mass of regular versus a raw mass of gunslinger, I would give it to the regular because they are more easily remassable. You won't have as much population problems, etc., etc.
The gunslinger is cheaper though, notably. And it has a higher base damage and higher burst to start because of the charge action.
That is true, and I have yet to see a regular pick up a pickaxe.
And 4.5 speed as well. Gunslinger's at 4.5.
Yeah, true. And then they cannot mine. I mean, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, I honestly am at this point with USA where it's like regulars, sharpshooters, state militia, blah blah blah. Give me the outlaws. I genuinely, it's so funny because outlaws are even Royal Guard units for USA. We forgot to mention that for the gunslinger, that it's a Royal Guard unit for USA. But like I genuinely think that outlaws are just inherently better than USA's normal units when it comes to standard play. It really is really is just the case. I think I think outlaws are the best way to play standard USA.
I mean, the dev definitely push in that way. Like Oklahoma Black Mesa being buffed 3 times in a row.
That card
if that doesn't scream, though. Use me. If that doesn't scream, use me, please.
That card used to be
I don't know what
useless. And now it's in a glory day for sure. All right.
Speaking of use me, please. I see the Azap, but maybe we need to go for other Musketeers
let's
first.
do the Musketeers first. I do want to talk about the Azap. Do you have the Bolus Warrior pulled up for the?
Yeah, I have one for you. So it is a heavy infantry unit.
That's what I thought. Okay, so people were lying to me. Got it. The Bolus Warrior is kind of cool. It's kind of like the Icon in that it is a musketeer with area of effects. However, unlike the Icon, this thing is both locked till age 3, meaning it has worse availability than almost every other heavy infantry unit in the game, and also has negative infantry multipliers, meaning this guy is almost exclusively an anti-cavalry unit. It does snare from range, though. It does not have as good of an animation as these shooting units, but its animation was vastly improved in a fairly recent update. They used to have a very long windup. That's not so the case. That's not so the case anymore. Now they shoot relatively quickly. It's more like the difference between sharpshooters and skirmishers instead of longbows and skirmishers, right? The Bolus Warrior is a very solid ranged anti-cav unit, but the problem is it loses to every other musketeer on this list, and that's a big issue. They also are not as strong in melee as they are in range. If we're gonna put I definitely think that the Bolus Warrior has some niche uses, but emphasis on the niche in niche uses. You know, they are certainly basically the only ranged anti-cavalry unit that Inca has access to, because their other big anti-cav unit is but the other anti-cav unit is the Plume Spearman, though, and the Plume Spearman is a damn good pike. And so
that is true.
Yeah, they don't have ranged anti-cav, but do you really need ranged anti-cav with Inca? That's certainly a question there as well. And I find myself putting these guys in the C tier, lower than the Desperado and the Rusket, personally. I like these guys. I think they were better before they had their negative infantry multiplier. They were really good, actually, before they had their negative infantry multiplier.
Yeah.
And they're also better than they were when they first came out, because these guys used to cost 2 pop, and that was ridiculous. But now they only cost 1 pop, which is... They're much better than they used to be. And I think that you can absolutely make good strategies with these guys. But they're niche. They are very, very niche.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So this is I think, one of the most feast or famine heavy infantry out there. If you have good micro and you manage to keep the infantry at bay, and you have this good combo of jungle bowman and bolus warrior, you can have the bolus warrior chase the mass from a safe distance and make the jungle bowman rain down hell on your enemy's mass without ever being touched. And it feels amazing. And then, for some reason, you look away for a second, you look back, and there's dops on this guy, and they just disappear. Because they also have range resist. So if anything come close to them, even cav, and that's one of the problems, they don't do that well. They do 20 damage for a veteran unit, by the way.
Now, granted, 20
damage per shot to cav.
Now, granted, if you are going to be, under the context of I want to use Bolus Warriors, you're going to be sending the Bolus Warriors support card, which does improve their melee capabilities.
From pathetic to bad. But yeah, it does. And that's why I say feast or famine. The second something goes into melee with them, they die. But if you manage to kite, and their animation was indeed buffed, it's a decent unit. But really, it does 5 damage in melee to musketeers. 5. It has as much hand attack as a surgeon. To keep it in perspective, this is hella bad.
Don't underestimate surgeons in melee. They got scalpels.
Yeah, and for some reason they always use their fist. I'm like, you're a dumbass. You had like 10 years of study just to use your fist in a knife fight.
I think my Inquisitor Rush has shown that the Russian priest is very serviceable as a frontline tank.
The priest, yeah. I understand why the priest doesn't want to use a weapon, but come on, the surgeon, he's using knives all day. I mean, that's completely besides the point, but So yeah, C tier is really fine. Feast of Famine. If you're like godlike with your micro and never ever do a mistake, maybe it's B tier. But like, you can also just play Brits and forget about your Musketeer mess and still have everything killed. Mm-hmm. So
All right. Let's see here. Let's talk about. I want to talk about the Janissary last because it's a great segue, I think, into some of the other units here. Let's talk about the Sentinel. I love the Sentinel. I know a lot of people don't, but I do love these guys. They recently got buffed, and the buff that they got was actually very important. So these guys got a 5 base HP bump, which doesn't sound like much, but it is going to scale a little bit harder with all of their with all of Malta's upgrades that they get for their cards. It also is something else that they got was, I think they got a base range increase to 14, if I'm not mistaken.
13.
13.
Yeah.
These guys have these guys have higher range, higher HP, and higher base movement speed compared to other Musketeers. But importantly, they also get the aura for being near your buildings. They get a combat aura for being near your buildings, and then under the context of using Sentinels, you're also going to be sending Papal Bull, which allows you to get an aura under your opponent's buildings, and that is a 15% aura for fighting near something that you are always going to be fighting near, because combats don't happen in the middle of nowhere. They happen in important strategic locations, like buildings,
Yeah, and
that,
by the way, should they happen?
Boost is an aura boost, which means it scales and it gets better as they go further. And they are 2-pop units, right? But they can also build outposts, which is great, because that's what they get their scaling aura bonus off of. And then on top of that, they have so many ridiculous upgrades. Between they have the Sovereign Order of Malta and the Papal Bull upgrade, and then they also have a ridiculous 45% stat boost in Age 4 that also gives a flintlock rocket, and it suddenly turns them into very viable units, even given that they're 2-pop. And these guys are 2-pop, but they cost the same as a normal Musketeer, which means the population is their real cost, right? That charged action though does siege damage, so it's going to allow them to. And it has higher range too, and it's going to allow them to not only perform better against skirmishers, it doesn't make them perform better against cannons, but it does siege damage with splash. They're going to perform really well against skirmishers. It also gives them extra range on their anti-building siege attack, which is really, really good. Like the flintlock, I cannot understate how like amazing the Sentinel is. And people are like, oh, but it costs 2-pop. And like, but you don't understand. It costs the same as a norm. It costs 100 resources like a normal Musketeer, but its base stats allow it to beat the Sepoy with no cards while it's under an aura. And that is the thing that I was going to bring up, is that the 5 extra HP that they give it allows it to beat Sepoy in 1v1 without any upgrade, without any cards, which is amazing. It used to require a couple cards before they would beat Sepoy in 1v1, but now, under the aura, they kill Sepoy in 1 less hit than Sepoy kill them. And Sepoy are the kings of efficiency in just haymaking, right?
Yep.
And I absolutely love the Sentinel. Oh, they also got a 5 Sentinel card added to Age 2, making these guys much easier to mass really quickly in Age 2. I love the Sentinel. I think they are viable in every age. And because it's kind of like the Strelid, right? The Strelid is extremely population inefficient, even as a 1-pop unit, right? But the reason that the Strelid is so good is because it's so dirt cheap for the amount of stats you get. It has very bad stats for a 1-pop unit, but very good stats for a unit that costs 10 wood and 40 food. And likewise,
I had your sentence in mind.
Yes, I have a sentence, a lingo, a slogan for the Sentinel, rather, that I have been saying ever since Malta came out. Would you care to share it with the audience?
Yeah, the Sentinel is the Strelets of Soldados.
Sentinels are the Strelets of Soldados. That is the truest shit, and I love the Sentinel. I think it's a severely underrated multi-unit. I think it like I said, it beats Sepoy in 1v1 shootouts. So if somebody pushes into you with Sepoy, get fucked, bro. And then they also have they also have, you know, as much they have more melee than Sepoy too. But they have like a better multiplier, I think, than Sepoy as well. So they actually keep up with other Musketeers in the melee department, but they get a lot more in the socket bayonet. Like, you can actually use these guys as Halberdiers if your opponent really has a lot of range.
Yes, completely.
It's quite funny, actually. And then these guys also become basically the fastest Musketeers in the game after you give them military drummers, so that's cool as well. Like Sentinels, I'm borderline considering putting them in S tier, honestly.
That's what, personally, I would put them in S tier. And the reason why is you currently have a build. I think Sir Cullen popularized the build, where for, I think, the first 15 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, he goes nothing but Sentinels.
Yeah, it
like
works.
Just nothing but Sentinels, and it freaking works. And the only reason why we don't see the Sentinel more often is
because people think they're bad because they're 2-pop but have similar bases to a Musk.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. The reason why is the crossbow is so goddamn OP for Malta that everyone and their mothers goes crossspike. and don't mind. I mean, I'm not different. I go crossspike with Malta. I'm not saying like I'm better than anyone. No, I go crossspike with Malta, and at some point I just do away with the pike because you can.
I'm better than other people, not you.
and you turn them into like essentially pocket ICBMs. I don't know, or pocket ballistas. I don't know.
I have always been a believer in the Sentinel. I have always loved these guys. I have always used them. I love these guys.
There's also something to be said about a card that was bad-ish that could see play. And I say could because it's super niche and super hard to use, which is wall guns that gives extra attack and range to Sentinels.
That card is really not great. I love Sentinels. I never put that card in my Sentinel deck.
You need 20 wall segment within a 12 range of the Sentinel.
It's so bad!
To increase its range. But here's the thing. With the range buff, it now increases its range to 19 range. If you manage to do it. I mean, and with the Battle Blaster card, you can increase it to 21 range.
But you can't fucking move it anywhere. If you move your Sentinel, that range is going to decrease. And,
exactly. So it's incredibly hard to use. But if you need to defend 1 point, it can situationally be potentially decent.
The problem is if you need to defend 1 point and put 20 wall segments in a 12 range area, your opponent's just going to avoid that spot. He's not going to go through 20 walls just so he can get that 1 point, you know?
That is true. Also,
I cannot understand.
Go ahead.
The Sentinel, fantastic unit, don't use wall guns. It's bad. It has great stat capabilities and boosting, but it's so impossibly difficult to use. It should just be another aura. It should literally just be another aura boost. Like, it should just be if you're in range of walls, get X bonus. And they would obviously have to cut the bonus, like, a lot.
Yeah, right? Because the bonus is actually insane.
The
like,
bonus is
you
insane.
Can outrange Skirmisher with a Musketeer.
But, like, just cut the bonus and make it so that if they're just standing near a wall, then it works. But otherwise, it's so bad. I don't use it. It's so bad.
One last thing I want to say is, you mentioned, you don't get the bonus
when you're fighting in the middle of nowhere. The reason also why you are not fighting in the middle of nowhere as the opponent is because the middle of nowhere is ranged by a fixed gun. So you don't go there. You just fight in your base, and that's where the papal ball card becomes really insane.
Yeah, it does.
Because
it's
if they leave their base, they get blasted by a fixed gun. They stay in their base, the Musketeers are better. And as you say, in terms of cost effectiveness, the Sentinel is insane. To me, it's an S tier unit.
Yeah, these guys beat beat every other Sentinel in like resource efficiency. It beat every other Musketeer in resource efficiency in every single age. It's pretty hilarious. Like I said, they beat Sepoy in every age, and they cost less than Sepoy. You just have to be fighting near a building for it to happen. You don't even need any cards for it. It's great. All right. Let's see here. Let's talk about our next Musketeer, and that is the Nizam Fusilier.
Oh, Nizam. Unit's insane. Unit's super hard to get, though.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to make of it. Like, in terms of, if we don't take availability into account, that's an S tier unit.
But the problem is we do take availability into account, and as a result, in terms of availability, it's D tier. And so I figure, it's possible to make a strategy around these guys, but even when you do make a strategy around them, the availability is still a hard barrier to breach, because if you lose your mass, it's hard to get it back. I put them in B tier. They're niche. They're solid. They have very good stats. They have shit availability, and it brings them down.
That is super hard to put them next to the Spanish Musketeers. It breaks my heart, but I see your point. I mean, it's if you can get them, if you can keep up the mass.
I always get a comment in my heavy infantry tier. I was like, "Why the fuck you putting Nizam so low?" I'm like, it's because their availability. Shut up.
I mean, that's a tough sell, but yeah, if you can get a mass of them, the unit's insane. You put that and great bombards, and you just laugh maniacally as you just roll over everything. Add Spahid in there for a good measure, and I'm still waiting for the day that Dev finally makes Spahid trainable for the stables. We're gonna get there with enough memes. We're gonna get there and have like the most ridiculous Omega Lol Musk Husk combination in the game. We're gonna get there, I promise.
The devs seem to love autos. I wouldn't be surprised. All right, similar I rate this in almost the exact same position, but slightly worse because it is harder to make a build around these guys. But S tier fighting stats plus some great anti mercenary multipliers that are very convenient, but not so great availability. The Maigadi I also put in the B tier for almost the exact same reason.
Yep. I would consider putting.
It's very possible to make strategies based around the Maigadi. It's a little harder than the Maigadi for the Nizam, though, so that's why I put it a little lower.
So the fun thing is, the Maigadi is B tier because it's a Hausa unit. The second you would give the Maigadi to Ethiopia, they would go straight to S tier.
Yeah, because Ethiopia can gather influence so much faster than Hausa in the early game. In the late game, Hausa beat Ethiopia in influence generation most of the time. But like Ethiopia is so much better at gathering influence in the early game that the Maigadi would be just insane.
Yeah. Availability shit, superb unit. I would say that it's less versatile than the Nizam. So I would even consider putting it a lower tier if we're going by availability. Like what you get for this shit availability is like really worse than the Nizam.
It is.
So I would consider C tier, but B tier is fine too.
I will agree with C. I think it's a high C, low B. For now, I think I'll put it in B, and we might move it to C later once we start to fill out the rest of the list, but it looks so weird to have twice as many C tiers as B tiers. It's so awkward for my lists, because my lists are normally so heavily B-weighted. Which I know is just because we haven't gotten to the melee stuff yet.
Don't worry, D will fill up too.
This will fill up real quick, guys. Trust me. Yeah. Tomahawks. I don't like the tomahawk.
Well, it's so hard. They got buffed recently. And hyenas got buffed too, which is an insane pair. The tomahawk used to have an animation where they wonder about the mysteries of the universe for 3 hours before throwing their axe for some reason. But now the animation is much faster, and it really feels nice. However,
it's made completely irrelevant by the third age, because it's a food word unit. Same with the Konya Horseman, except the Konya Horseman is at least still a fucking horse.
Yes, and still has multiplier against artillery, so it's somewhat relevant against fast fortresses. Even though you don't really want a fast fortress against Haudenosaunee, because you're going to get 1 million hyenas in front of your base by 6 minutes, but, to each their own.
Yeah, no, the Tomahawk is just made so quickly. It's such a good unit in Age 2, but it's even a food wood unit, which we've mentioned makes it a very, very good in Age 2, because food wood units are generally better for Age 2 macro when you have less settlers and can generally only afford lots of 2 resources instead of 3. However, it is made so quickly irrelevant as soon as the game passes the 9-minute mark that it's just, it's not great.
Like, in terms of early availability, it would be S tier, like big button plus the shipment plus a batch of 5. There you go. You have 16 Tomahawk at 5 minutes. It's amazing. I don't know if you have a video on the Haudenosaunee Rush on your channel, but there is a million videos of Haudenosaunee Rush. If you want to learn how to rush, it's one of the easiest and best rushes in the game. People tend to have demeaning names for it that I won't say here, but like, it's an insane rush, and it's in part due to the Tomahawk. So in terms of early game, it's an S tier unit. It's amazing. But later on,
I think it goes here.
Yeah,
personally,
that's fair enough.
It is
if we
still,
balance late game and early game.
It is still ranged. It is that's the thing. It is still ranged, and as a result, you can't bring it too low. It's a solid ranged musketeer, and spoilers. We're going to be punishing a lot of these units for that.
One last thing I want to say about the Tomahawk is there's 2 main moments you get them. Get them in H2 early on. There's also a really good build that was nerfed multiple times, which is the FI for Horde, where you get the old ways card in H4, and you click the 3 big button back to back. You can get a huge mass that is escorted, I'd say, by 6 light infantry, light cannon guns. That makes for a really interesting push. Really good against fast industrials, because you counter the heavy cannons, and if they get like any kind of bullshit cavalry mercenary or something, you obliterate them. And you can really pressure them. Consider using the Haudenosaunee FI against some FI Civ on the ladder. It's really good. Those are the 2 moments you would consider Tomahawks. Most of the time, you'll go for a skirm good composition if you don't rush.
Yeah, 100%. All right, next, let's talk about the Soldados. We got 2 of them here. Let's talk about Mexico first. Mexico's Soldados. What can we say? They got a fair number of upgrades. You can turn a batch of Saltadors into Soldados. It's really cool. You can also turn all of your Soldados into Dragoons, which is really cool. But, I mean, that's not really saying much, because Mexico can turn anything into anything else. Like, oh, I see you. I see that you're struggling and trying to create counters for my. You're massing heavy infantry to deal with my outposts. What if my outposts were to become falconets? How would your heavy infantry deal with that? Haha! It's fucking Mexico, after all. The Soldado is a 2-pop unit. It has twice the HP and 1.5 times the attack of a normal musketeer, which you would think makes it population inefficient, but it actually makes it exactly population efficient. The Soldado is literally worth exactly 2 musketeers, and it is almost a dead tie in a shootout against 2 musketeers. It's actually really funny. Like, I basically don't even give the Soldado any extra points just because it is so equivalent to musketeers. However, it is cheaper than musketeers, at least per pop, which is important to note. And also, there's some visual trickery with Soldados, because your brain, when your opponent sees when you see your opponent's Soldados, thinks, oh, there's only 5 musketeers, I should be able to get away with 1 batch of crossbows. Nope, you're gonna lose. You need to fool your brain into seeing 5 Soldados and knowing you're dealing with 10 musketeers. And that's a very tricky thing to do sometimes. But overall, it is almost exactly just 2 musketeers, and Mexico doesn't even have the craziest amount of combat cards. They have a lot of cards that affect Soldados, but they're all like 5% here, 5% there, 5% here. That's just kind of how Mexico works.
I think there's a church card, though, that makes him train like insanely slower, but increases their damage tremendously. Yeah, something like that.
It gives him a 15% combat in exchange for slower training, yes.
I mean, at that point, I don't know how to rate Mexico's unit, because it's like Portuguese problem, but reverse. Like, why would you do this unit where you can do anything else? But why would you do anything else? You can do this unit. There's so much option, you don't really know anymore.
The thing about Mexico, though, is that whereas Portugal has an issue where they don't really have a great unit to pair with their musketeer, because that isn't outclassed completely by Castador Dragoon. That's not the case with Mexico. You can do anything you want with Mexico, and it fucking works. You can go Sturm Goon with the Saltador, or you can go Soldado Chinaco, and Chinacos are also like S-tier cavalry units. So there's something to be said for that too. I think Chinaco are like one of, if not the best cavalry unit in the entire game, actually. So the Soldado can pair really well with that. But if you really don't want to invest in Soldados because they are expensive and you don't want your whole army to be 2-pop units, you can just make really cheap Insurgentes instead. It's very odd. Like, you can do anything with Mexico.
So I'm trying so hard right now to not be rude to Mexico, because I'm sure there's something interesting, but there's so many options. You just don't want to theory craft them.
I have the same issue. Mexico seems like it would be the perfect civ to make great theory craft civs. It's not. Because everything on Mexico feels so random, it feels like nothing pairs together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and that's why
we could have a whole video on this.
Yeah, we could. We honestly could. And it's one of the reasons I prefer USA over Mexico, because Mexico can, like, you can do crazy shit with Mexico, crazier than with USA, but you're more likely to have something cohesive with USA while also being crazy,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, I called Mexico fatigue. Like, at the beginning, I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. Oh, you have this option," and then you're like, "You have every option. Just get it over with." I'm resigning this game.
Mexico is honestly exhausting to play. It's mentally taxing.
But yeah, I guess A-tier unit, maybe even S.
Yeah, I'd say
depending on your play.
I'd say it's A-tier for sure. It's basically a nothing special. I have good upgrades Musketeer. But it is slightly cheaper, and there is that visual trickery. So I think probably right here. Last time I put it in the S tier, and I kind of disagree with that sentiment nowadays. It's nothing special, I don't think. I put it in the same rate as the Portugal Musketeer and the Guest Kenya.
fair enough, I think. Spanish Soldado, I guess. These used to be absolutely S tier. Because free upgrade, free everything. You didn't have to mine coin. You would see people on the ladder going H4, shipping to factories.
They also had way higher stats than Mexico's, and still do, probably.
Yeah. You have Unction, you have Peninsula Guerrillas, you have
They used to have a 10% boost just from the get-go. That got removed. Unfortunately. Well, I guess fortunately, actually. But yeah, no. This was so funny to me. Because when the Spain card came out that allowed you to get haciendas in Age 3 that made Soldados, this went completely under the radar. And I made a video about it, calling it broken almost immediately, and to be completely ignored. And then almost a year later, everybody else caught on and realized it, and I get none of the credit anymore. And then they got nerfed immediately after that.
I mean, it's. I think today it's fine. Yeah. But actually, I discovered your channel with this video.
Really, it was that video, the Soldado God one.
Yeah, because what I used to do is I still do the Spanish low ship station. Maybe people know me for that. And the llamas work the same rate as cows, as the Mexican cows. But the thing is, you can spam llamas when you have the card. And these guys, for some reason, really accelerate Soldado production more than they should. Mm-hmm. If you mix llamas and villagers. And you can have a pretty decent amount of resources generation from your llamas.
Yep.
And so you can pair it with a livestock boom. You can have 10 llamas in the livestock pen, making sure you still have plenty of food to go around. 5 in each hacienda. Maybe 10 villagers in each hacienda, and you can still make a lot of other units, supporting unit, artillery, for example. And you could have a really good resource generation, have livestock really a powerhouse for your economy, rather than, an insurance policy in case hunts run out.
That video that I made a year and a half ago when that thing came out, that game that I posted was actually the very first online game that I took out of instead of just practicing with bots with my brother, because we practiced that build order quite a bit because we were like, okay, before we take it online, this is pretty stupid. Let's make sure we get this down pat so it can really look great, right? And we played against Platypus Slayer in that game. Now this is back a year and a half ago, and Platypus Slayer a year and a half ago was so easily ticked off by whatever he considered OP in the game. And we played one game where I showed off this new Soldado trick and got these Soldados just crazy high stats and just never-ending pushes and armies with Soldados. And it was a 25-minute game. He ranted in the Discord chat to me and Chase about how broken this was and how broken he thought this was for the next hour and a half after this game. It was so funny. He's a lot calmer now. By the way, Platypus Slayer is a great dude. It's just he's very prone to ranting. Is the thing. And
we do have a Discord channel for that.
That was a lot more the case a year and a half ago than it was now. He still does it occasionally, but no one near as much. And I will always remember that game for that reason. But he chewed me and Chase out about this build order for an hour and a half after a 25-minute game. And now, granted, since then the Soldados got their 10% standard buff removed, and then in addition to that, they also had their train time extended at the hacienda.
Yeah, and you need now to pay for the guard upgrade. You get veterancy, but not guard.
Yes, you also don't get Imperial, if I'm not mistaken. You have to pay for that one too.
Yeah.
You have to pay for their upgrades. They no longer shadow tech. They no longer shadow tech into the later ages. So they have been suitably nerfed. However, I think it's okay now. I still think they are. I still think they're better than the Mexican Soldado.
Yes, 100%. Like,
so
show them
dumb.
who's the home city is.
Soldados with unction is so dumb.
I think you can go up to what is like 120 or 130 damage for a musketeer.
Something like that.
Like, it's not a musket; it's a bazooka at that point. Like, let's be honest. So one thing we forgot to add on the Soldado that Mexico can make use of.
Now, one thing
and I think Spain too.
I will
Go
say,
ahead.
The haciendas that these guys have do have an availability issue, and that is because they are locked till age 3, and also you can only make them from your haciendas, and you cannot remake your haciendas if they get destroyed, which makes them very, very fragile. I do remember I had one game where I did my Soldado strategy against a Dutch player, and after wiping the Dutch player's army and we started to push into his base, the Dutch player proceeded to make 15 horse artillery, run them around the outside of the map, and then blow up both of my haciendas, and then we lost.
Props to him to make 15 horse artillery, and not just petards. Like, that's like going out with a bang.
We actually lost that game, but it does create.
All right.
The problem is you have 2 very specific fail points for your Soldados, and I guess for the availability, I am considering moving them lower than the Mexico, but my heart just loves them more than the Mexico Soldado.
Ancient plus Peninsular Guerrillas is just so good in H4. Like, the amount of time you would see people on the ladder just butting their fast industrial into Soldados plus heavy cannons was honestly disheartening.
But yeah, let's move on before we get too hung up on this.
Yeah.
Unless you have anything else to add on.
No, go ahead.
Okay, one musketeer left. That is the Janissary. The haymaker that is very similar to the sepoy, but worse.
Completely agree. And I think you wanted to put him a tier below the sepoy, and if you would do that, I would agree too.
I'm thinking probably about right here. Now, the Janissary is very good. Like, it's a ranged musketeer. They're all very good, right? But it's also a very important and integral unit for Ottomans. Which I think is actually a point above the Repugnant here, the Rajaput or whatever. This guy has 210 base HP, which is very, very tanky. But he's got low attack, right? And I think he has 19 base attack, right? Is that accurate, or is it 20?
I think it's 20.
Okay. Yeah, they have lower base attack than the other musketeers. And yeah, they're going to lose against Sentinels because everything does. But the Janissary is the haymaker. It's not great at anti-cavalry, which is a bit unfortunate. But it's got a decent melee attack that can beat most other melee units that aren't cavalry, which is quite relevant. And even if it does do less damage against cavalry, it has a much larger HP pool, so it's going to get a couple extra hits in, which is very relevant. So it actually equals out to about the same, right?
So yeah, the reason why I would put it like around the sepoy is you have a 10-10 rush with sepoy as India. You have a double racks Jan rush with Ottomans. That's pretty much, I wouldn't say the same thing, but the spirit is the same. You want to have like established dominance, and India admittedly has better eco. Even if Ottoman has great eco, it does it quite a bit better than India in that regard, because you often have a TP with Ottomans. So you have the 2 haymakers. You can't really go in melee, but if you go mass cav, they won't really be that good. Yeah, but that's what changed about the sepoy, by the way. Just, you would never go mass cavalry against the sepoy ever.
Sepoy used to hard counter cavalry, like borderline harder than the Carolean. It was so funny.
And to me, it's not the same unit, but you have the same spirit. It's a bully musketeer. You go in the base, you're here, you're menacing, and then you let your eco slowly, mass them up. Great also with the Abel's gun. If you want to switch it up and don't go double racks, you can go racks and artillery foundry.
This unit is a very important unit to Otto's military because they don't really have a good dragoon. They have cavalry archers, which are slower, and which are slower. They're better at standing and firing, but they can't chase cavalry around really well. And as such, the Janissary is going to be a very necessary unit to keep things off of your other units, and it also costs food coin, which tends to scale better as the game goes on.
The amount of coin is much lower, by the way, much lower than the Sepoy. It's 1925. 1925. The amount of coin of the Janissary is lower than the Super Mask, quote unquote.
Oh, right.
It's 25 coin and 90 food.
Gotcha.
So it's really affordable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 80 is good.
Yeah, it's going to work with just about any unit. Much like the Sepoy, it's going to work well with pretty much all of Otto's other units. It's going to work well with the Dalis. It's going to work with Great Bombards. It's going to work with Otto's guns. It's going to work with everything. Yeah, it's just a very solid unit. I just don't think it's these units, All right. Yep. We are out of Musketeers. Isn't that a great feeling? Time to fill up the B tier. Yeah. About time. Starting with.
Do you want to finish with Ottomans or?
Yeah, let's start with the Azap. I actually really like the Azap, but I have yet to use them. I have yet to really see somebody use these en masse, and I also don't play auto. Otherwise, I would do it myself. But I don't play autos, so I've never used these guys. I have used them as India, however, through the consulate, which is kind of neat. But that's not really what we're talking about. Here we're talking about... so the Azap, let's talk about what it is. It is a heavy infantry unit that counters cavalry, all forms of cavalry, both dragoons and normal heavy cavalry, from both melee and range, very, very well. But then loses against basically all forms of infantry. Which I mean, it doesn't do the haymaker job that other other units of this category perform, like the Janissary, like the Sepoy. But it does do the anti-cavalry function of heavy infantry very, very single-sidedly, and that is very cool. Especially considering a lot of Ottoman's other units are, rather weak to cavalry, such as the obus gunner in particular. The Azaps make a great plus to obus gunners, and the Azaps also have a fair number of upgrade cards to them as well, which is pretty cool. I personally like the Azaps. I've never used them, but I have borderline considered trying out Ottomans for these guys, and I wish more people would use them so that I could see them in glory.
All right. Bison Gaming, I have kind of an intervention to Ottoman mains about this unit. And I'm sorry if you get angry comments because of that. But Ottoman mains, this is an intervention. How many buffs do you need on a unit so you switch from your double Jan rush? Seriously, these guys were buffed 4 times in a row, and they were already good at the beginning. But at that point, I seriously think the devs are doing a social experiment on how many buffs in a row do you need on the ASAP for Ottoman mains to consider changing their build orders. This unit deals the equivalent of 64 damage per 3 seconds to dragoons. This is insanity. This is Imperial skirmisher levels of damage in H2. This unit single-handedly counters a whole cav class that used to have only soft counters.
This unit single-handedly counters all of Lakota.
Yeah! Yes!
They
you can go cannon.
Could probably even fight rifle riders.
You can go cannon and Azaps against Lakota, and what do they do? Like, you can have so many creative ways to play Ottomans with the Azap that are absolutely outlandishly strong. And I just see Ottoman mains spamming Janissaries. And this is driving me bananas.
It's like, I want to see these guys on the field because, like, they seem so good and nobody uses them.
The one person I've seen them use is Platypus. And I don't know if you remember the heydays of the Swedish Dragoon, the Hackapellet.
Mm-hmm.
They used to be completely insane. They got nerfed within reason.
Yeah.
It was a 2v2. And the guy in front of him made nothing but Hackapellet. And after some point, Platypus said, "Oh, wait, I have the Azap, by the way."
Like, that solves, because the problem with with countering Hackapellets was you could make skirmishers, but then they would lose in melee. That doesn't apply to the Azap, though.
And the thing is, I think he made a group of, 30. They were veteran in H4. They weren't like even that buffed. And they obliterated the Hackapellet, which was by far in that patch the most broken unit in the entire game. And I was like, finally, one Ottoman player understood he has another unit. Granted, it was Plaid that is,
Platypus has always been prone to trying out new things.
Yeah, innovative and skillful. That's the majority of Ottoman players, and I'm sorry for the commune section you're gonna have.
It's funny because Platypus he's all about trying new things and new strategies, but he's all about complaining about how he prefers the older stuff more.
I mean, to be fair, sometimes some of the new stuff can feel a bit, let's just say, unfair.
This is a topic for another video, but...
Yeah, but I do commend the dev for trying to bring new content to us all grumpy cows.
Should we put the Azap in S tier just to piss off the comment section, and also because it's true?
I mean, yes. We finally have a hard counter to goons. And it's for the one civilization that doesn't see any innovation. This is driving me nuts. You have no idea how.
Yeah, we'll put it above the Econ and the Sentinel, but below the Karolian Ashigaru and British Musketeer.
I mean, Azaps are insane. Please, for the love of God, Ottoman mains, try it before they give it siege damage for the next patch.
Yeah, no, this unit is so funny. It's like it is the perfect core, absolute maxed out representation of the heavy infantry purpose, which is to counter cavalry to the umpteenth degree in every facet of the assets of the Azap's job. It counters cavalry and it does nothing else, and it does it so much better than like so many other things. It's nuts.
Let's not forget, because I'm ranting, but let me give you some recent buffs. They get one more range with each upgrade, up to, I think it's 19 Imperial Age.
What?
So 19? Yes, they switch from range resistance to melee resistance depending on their stance. So if you are ranged,
keep it coming. Why don't you?
They were changed. This was the first buff from food and wood heavy to mainly food heavy with wood cost. I mean, how many buffs do you need? Anyway, it's S tier. Please try it before they do something absolutely crazy for their social experiment.
We put it a whole rank above the Janissary. That should tell you something.
Please stop me before I lose my mind. Let's go on another unit.
Okay, now we finally only have melee units left, and now it's time to start filling out the rest of this tier list.
Yes, sir.
Alright, let's start with Pikemen. This is to represent all pikemen that are not Malta, USA, Sweden, or Spain. D tier.
So it's what? France, Dutch, Germany?
Why would they make
Like, stuff
pikemen
like
when they can make musketeers? And Dutch in particular have halberdiers. Now, don't get me wrong. The pikeman serves a purpose. It can stop raids. It can burn down buildings. But not better than any musketeer can. Not better than pretty much any other every other melee unit here can. It's the bottom barrel of the heavy infantry list. It's got the lowest HP. It's got the lowest attack. It's got the lowest everything. I don't see why, if we were to put pikemen any higher than D, I don't know what we would put in D.
So, the pikemen. It really depends on civilization. Dutch never want to do pikemen.
Right.
They are forced to.
It does depend on the civilization. That's why I separated other civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
And Dutch aren't forced to. They have the age 2 halb.
With a logistician, but more often than not, you want to go for the 400 wood because you're a greedy person, and you want to have banks.
I love the logistician for Dutch, but okay.
I mean, it's a super good option. Don't get me wrong; it's excellent. But more often than not, standard play is banks because they're so the 400 wood. And what I say is like Dutch don't want to make pikes. Like a batch of pikes is essentially half a bank that goes away.
Yeah.
So if you met 10 pikes, it's just a bank,
now,
like sitting around doing nothing. You don't want to do this.
What I will say about the pikemen is that they have a very good age 2 shipment. If your opponent is pushing in raiding with cav, the 8 pike shipment will put a stop to that. But so will a 5 musketeer shipment, you know. So will a 5.
It's actually 6 in H2.
Sorry, I'm used to regulars being, you know what I mean. Okay, but yeah, it's a fucking pike, you know. There are. Do I really need to explain myself?
No, it's D tier, and that's fine. One thing I would say is when you do pikes, again, with most of civilization, you are forced to do pikes.
Mm.
You don't want to make them, so D tier is fine. I would say, however, that there was one pike in this bundle that I consider honestly A tier, which is the German pike. Because the German pike can benefit from Tilly's discipline and advanced arsenal and go up to 6.5 speed.
Yeah, but
and here's the thing.
Just make DOPS!
But DOPS are insanely expensive with Tilly's discipline. You just add 4 food and 4 wood to the pikeman. There is... I mean, feel free to tell me if I cannot quote Age of Bison. But there is a game where I go for full pikes, just nothing but pikes, and obviously the Ulans that I have with shipments with Chile's discipline advanced arsenal. And there's a moment like you need half a second of not paying attention to your cav mass. And I delete it. Straight up delete it.
Okay, perhaps there is something to be said about maybe adding German pikes to a future tier list, and I will admit that. However, what I will say...
the normal one is trash.
However, what I will say is even if Germany was separate, I would not put it in A tier. And the reason is because I think it's it's outclassed by a different pike unit that I will get to soon.
All right. But yeah, D tier for the standard pike is fine. Like, why would you do pike as France when you have musketeers? 100% agree.
All right. Another D tier pike is the USA pike, and I'm going to put it even lower. Now, don't get me wrong. I actually quite like the tercios. I think it's a very great bonus. You get these with the Spanish with the Spanish logistician. I'm actually going to put them higher because I actually have used these guys and wanted to use these guys before. So you get these guys with the Spanish immigrants, and it allows you to get tercios, which I actually think they have a 10% stat boost, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, and Shadow Tech.
And they Shadow Tech in every age, which I was about to bring up, but you didn't let me finish.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. They are cheaper than other pikes, but not that much cheaper. You know, the Minutemen is kind of the king when it comes to being like so much like cheaper than other equivalent units, because it's, you know, 25 attack and 200 HP for 25 food and 25 coin. Well, these guys are also 25 food and 25 coin, but that's not quite as different as 40 food and 40 coin compared to the 75 food, 25 coin for a Musketeer that doesn't even match a Minutemen in stats by even a close margin, right?
Mm-hmm.
But these guys don't lose HP, and they are also one of the few units that USA have that are going to shred cavalry raiding parties. Like, it is one of USA's only, like, really, really viable haha fuck your raiding, like, moments. However, they have very ass availability, which is why I'm putting them in the D tier, because you need Spanish immigrants, which costs 300 food, and also you can't even train these guys until age 2, even if you send the card in age 1, which sucks. Because you can make Minutemen in transition from age 1 to age 2. You don't want to make them in age 1, but you can make them in transition. But with these guys, you have to wait all the way until you hit age 2. Which is really rough. However, and this is going to become a common theme with the rest of the pikemen, with the rest of the pikemen specifically as we talk about them. They work really well with really ragtag fast industrials because of the shadow teching. And we're also going to talk about that very similarly with Sweden, Malta, and Spain, not necessarily because of shadow teching, but because of cheap upgrades. But these guys work really well in a fast industrial, in one very specific fast industrial with USA, where you go fast industrial making pikes and then ship the polar bear card and then spam artillery shipments. I call it the PBFI. It's on my channel all over. I made like 3 videos for it. I might make another soon because it's been a while since I've done the PBFI. It is a classic strat among my channel. I love it so much. It's not good. But it has a very good niche for this pike.
I mean, it's D tier for a reason.
D-tier, yeah. But I it's D tier, but I like it. That's what we'll say. It's D tier, but I like it.
Fair enough.
There's also something to be said that I actually think the tercios are quite good in age 3. Whereas Minutemen do not scale in age 3, and you require a card in order to get anything out of them in age 3, which is their higher siege and the lack of HP degradation. Whereas these guys are good to go as soon as you get to age 3. They shadow tech into age 3, and Minutemen and Marines do not. They only shadow tech in ages 4 and 5, which is really cool. But yeah, that's it. Spain. So Spain, Sweden, and Malta are like the 3 kings of pikemen, except for maybe Germany as well. And that's just because they can fast industrial and get really, really cheap upgrades for pikemen and crossbows, and then send a ton of them through cards. Which is cool, but that's really all that they're good for. And they're even then, they're still very niche, and I kind of want to throw them in D anyways. Especially because, you know, Spain, if you're not doing a fast industrial and you need anti-cav with Spain, well, I got good news. You got the Rodolero, you got the Musketeer, you got Dragoons, you know? And then for Sweden, what are you doing making anything besides Caroleans and anything that's not a straight fast industrial, you know? So I kind of want to put these guys in D tier anyways. Would you agree with this statement?
So Spain, yes. Sweden, no.
Okay.
So the reason why Sweden has advanced arsenal from the get-go. This one is a safe bonus.
I guess
Sweden also has a technology in the church called push of pikes. With those 2, you can get 6 speed pikes. The other reason why is that you want to gather wood as Sweden to make tops.
That's true.
So you tend to have wood upgrades as Sweden, and also you have the leather cannon that costs food and wood. So you can have a pike artillery combo that costs food and wood, with a fast and swift pike that can siege down stuff and go back to defending the artillery mass really fast and be really a menace on the map. Which is a problem for pikes, because 5 speed just isn't enough to threaten Cav.
Yes, that's very true.
So Swedish pikes are decent.
I'll put
really decent.
I don't think they're like as good as the Carolean in any capacity, and the Carolean scales anything that they ever could be. But it is true that in the early game, if you need a food-wood composition specifically, then I do agree that you could do really well with the pikemen and the cannons.
The one thing I could say about Carolean and pikes is, while you get your Carolean mass going, consider adding just 5 pikes to your composition.
Help defend them, and you get the mass.
Exactly.
I get that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll put them. I'll agree to put the Sweden pikes in C. All right. The Maltese pikes are the other separate one. And these guys are B tier, for sure. And this is because they get, just like Sweden and Spanish, they get really cheap industrial upgrades if you want to go that route, and big shipments in Ages 4. But in addition to that, they get 3 rounds of archaic infantry combat upgrades, as well as the Malta's just standard Maltese bonus of getting extra HP off of every single card that you send. And then on top of that, they're of course paired greatly with the Malta crossbow, which is a still frankly stupid unit. But the pikes are very easy to mix in with the crossbow because they're both trained from the hospital and they both have the exact same resource cost. So you really can't go wrong with the pike crossbow composition. And yeah, I mean that's it. That's all there is to it.
Yep. Malta's pike is B tier because Malta's crossbow is S.
Exactly.
Essentially, I agree.
All right.
It's tried and true.
Let's talk about the Club Warrior from the Coda.
Sorry, what did you say?
I didn't catch what you said. You like roboted up.
D.
Yeah. I agree. It's D tier. Do you think it's worse or better than the Pikemen?
Kind of better, because the Seton Bowman 7 council fires, which I like. If any people in this Discord had a dime for any time, basically, where I ranted about 7 council fires, absolutely insane cost effectiveness, I would be poor right now if the dime came from me. This is real decent in a fast industrial. The Seton Bowman is an underrated light infantry unit. You can go for a cross pike as Lakota in H2. You get surprise points for it. Not really much else, but the Seton Bowman is decent, especially with the TP buffs.
So the thing is, not very many people do Club Warrior rushes, and as such, you can do a Club Warrior rush, and you can really catch your opponent off guard with it. However, the reason you catch them off guard with it is because the unit fucking sucks! So why would you be making them? That's like a British player doing a nothing but pike rush in Age 2. It's like, oh my god, that's really surprising, I say as I slaughter them all.
I mean, fair enough.
You have so many better units. You have bow riders. You have axe riders. The axe riders don't even have shit siege. You have so... The one use they have is that they bring siege to Age 2 Lakota. But, I mean, it's not like... Lakota is all about overrunning your opponent anyways, so if you've killed their military, there's not really much stopping you from burning down the TC anyways. It's just...
I mean, that's true. but it's really not a great unit. I'd say that much. But it has its uses. That's why it's sometimes you want to make them for siege.
Yes.
Because you don't have really better option as Lakota.
Until H3.
Whereas
until H3
from
when
normal
you can turn your
pikes,
settlers into siege units.
Whereas with Dutch, for example, you're forced to make pikes. You don't want to make pikes ever. So that's why it's a bit above, in my opinion.
Mm. All right, I think that's about it for that. Let's go over the Halberdiers. These are... I cannot express how easy it is to rank the Halberdiers. Alright. Fucking D. Fucking D. Fucking D. And A.
I knew it was about to come. You forgot the Russian one in D too.
Yeah, D as well.
Oh wait, there's a Soviet card that gives them... Oh yeah, never mind, still D.
The heavy infantry tier list is probably going to be the wonkiest tier list. I think we're going to have a lot more Ds than we are Cs, which is very unusual for my lists. But heavy infantry are so weirdly weighted and so weirdly balanced that like it's inevitable, you know. There's so many useless heavy infantry.
So I would just change around the order. The best D tier unit in this list
Italy
is the French Halberdier.
Oh, really? I was going to say Italy because you can mix them in with Papal Guards or and to buffer out that and defense and stuff.
So you have two new cards buffing the Halberdier for France.
The promotions affects them, right?
Yes, and you also have the Sans Suisse card that buffs crossbow, pikes, and Halberdiers, giving them plus 10% HP and plus 10% melee armor, putting them up to 30% melee armor. And 30% melee armor is really nice. So it's a really strong Halberdier. And for the Italian Halberdier, I'd even put them in C tier, because you can actually make use of the Italian Halberdier.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I was putting them in D mostly for the meme. I do think they are better than the other Halberdiers.
Schiavoni sword, infantry HP, and the Roman tactics. Fun fact, they have actually equivalent stat to the Dutch Halberdier with these three cards. This is how good this is.
So first let me introduce the Halberdier. So the Halberdier is an alternative to the Pikemen in that it is a much beefier version of the Pikemen that has a much larger attack but a much smaller multiplier. So the Pikeman has 8 base damage with a 5 times multiplier, meaning it does no damage against anything but 40 damage against cavalry, whereas the Halberdier has 20 damage at base, but only at 2 times versus cavalry, which means it does 20 damage to everything, but 40 against cavalry, and it has a hell of a lot more HP of 200 compared to 120 to boot. However, the Halberdier, the reason the Halberdier sucks is because it's age 3 locked, and those stats that we told you are age 3 bases, which means it doesn't have as many upgrades to work with as a lot of other units. Its stats are basically equivalent to a Janissary, but in melee, and also an age later, which sucks. They also have less movement speed than Pikemen, having only 4.5 instead of 5 speed, which we've already expressed how 5 speed isn't enough for Pikemen, and it's certainly not enough for Halberdiers. Now, we've gone over the fact that the Italian can at least pair well with the Papal Guard to help give you a very, very sizable Halberdier mass pretty quickly, and then they also have the charged action with the Papals as well, which is great. And then the France are the top of their game just because of promotions, but I mean, really not much else because they're pikemen and you're not going to be making them compared to musketeers anyways. They're all ass because why would you ever make any of these units when you have the musketeer, right?
To be honest, why would you make those units in H3 when you have the Dragoon?
Exactly.
French Dragoon are serviceable, and they do get Cav combat upgrades.
And either way, you're still going to get countered by the Skirmisher. The reason the reason the Dutch Halberdier is up here in A, however, is because the Dutch have a much larger amount of upgrades for the Halberdier than other civilizations, and they're actually very meaningful ones. For one thing, they have an H1 card that buffs Halberdiers and gives them a ton of extra speed. They also get Halberdiers an age early in age 2, but with their full age 3 stats, which is fucking wonderful. These guys become speed demons very, very quickly, and they are very, very beefy, which is rather unusual for Dutch's units, which are normally small and scrawny but run away. And the Halberdier is, haha, I'm in your face, burning down your shit, and you don't have the stats to compete. And it can very much so throw people off their game. The few times where I play Dutch, I either Petard Rush or I go with Halberdiers, because I just love the Halberdiers so much. Because I just love the Halberdiers so much for Dutch. They're also Royal Guard units for Dutch, which is kind of cool.
Yes, sir. I mean, exactly what you said. I don't know what you say else than you haven't experienced hand infantry until you have like demonically possessed 5.5 speed halberdier laughing maniacally, and they just go in and destroy absolutely everything in their path.
It's quite funny, it really is. I think that about covers all the Halberdiers. We were able to burn through those really quickly. There really wasn't any reason to spend a whole bunch of time on them individually.
So we do cover only Halberdiers that are available as a standard unit. Some other civilizations do have the Halberdiers, such as Sweden. People may know me as the person that invented the fish rush.
And there's also something to be said that Dutch also don't have a musketeer to outscale the Halberdier.
That is true. And so the Swedish can also get the Halberdier. They can actually are the one that can get the Halberdier the fastest, not counting the logistician from a mass of Halberdier the fastest. We're talking 5 minutes 30 after nerfs, because it used to be 5 minutes. Another reason, this is why I'm talking about it, why the Swedish pikeman is C tier, is that you have a card in H3 that can transform them into halberdiers. So the thing you can do with pikes that is pretty effective if your opponent does not expect it, you can rush in with pikes as the cards go in to transform them into halberdiers. And you can get pretty good engagement with that.
I kind of just realized we need to speed things up. We started 2.5 hours ago.
Oh god. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
We've been here 2.5 hours, I'm pretty sure. We need to speed things up. That only just occurred to me. Alright, so let's go over the Chang Dao and the Quang Pikemen. You can basically pair these guys together. They're both very comparable to each other. We can just throw them in C right next to each other. They're bad. They're Halberdier and Pikemen. The Chang Dao in particular is paired with the Skirmisher, which is quite nice. The Quang Pikeman, however, is paired with the Keshik, which is also quite nice if you want to make a pure anti-cav option. Which is the main reason I put it higher than the Chang Dao, is because you can make a pure anti-cav army with them.
Chang Dao has the Black Flag army at the castle. I would put him higher because of that. I hate Chang Pikeman with a passion, but that's just my personal opinion as a Chinaman.
The main reason we're rating these low is because they're fucking China units, and we penalize China units for being part of banner armies the same reason we penalize Ruskets for being part of 5-unit batches. Because you have to have you have to have the resources for the whole army before you start training, and that's stupid.
All right, moving on.
Basemen, C tier. These guys got buffed recently.
All right.
They used to be D, not so much anymore. Bottom of C tier for sure, because they are H3 locked unless you send an expensive card. But they are nonetheless C tier. They are no longer 3 pop. They are no longer stupid expensive. They are still slow, but they hit like a fucking truck, and that cannot be said for a lot of other units. They're basically like a top equivalent, which is really cool.
I personally hate those units because of their weird availability. Like,
I mean, yeah,
you don't want to make Kalankas because it's clunky.
Spoilers. These are the lowest rated of all of the DOP equivalent units.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%.
Let's go over all the DOP equivalent units. All right, so we have 4 more of them. We have DOPs, Hospitallers, Samurai, and Skull Knights. DOPs are the most expensive unit. Are the most expensive unit here among these 4, because although all of these are 200 resources, the Doppelsoldner in particular is heavily coin weighted. They cost 80 food and 120 coin, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
75, 125. Yeah.
Almost. Which is quite bad. They also have a 20 attack, which is less than that of the Hospitaller and the Samurai, but they have 2 area of effect, which the Samurai and the Hospitaller both have 1. Alright, so that's quite important there as well. They also have a ton of speed upgrades, and they have a whole ass Imperial upgrade available as a card in Age 4 at the expense of all your speed upgrades. So and then slower than the base speed. I think they're like B tier, basically. You can absolutely make a ton of great DOT builds, and they're a ton of fun to use. They can absolutely destroy the classification of these units are the big beefy boys that destroy everything in their path, but are very susceptible to micro if your opponent knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and like everyone should fear sieging a home city spawn point because of these guys. A dot pop in your Hausa Raider army. You look away for 2 seconds, don't go back. There's no army anymore.
Alright, Samurai cost 100 and 100, making them the perfect median. There's still 200 resources, they're 100 food, 100 coin. These guys have 28 attack, which is the highest between the 3 core trainables, being the oh my god, where'd the Samurai go?
It's in D tier. In between the French.
That's
and
not
right.
Sounds
about right, though.
They are the medium. These guys are all 2 pop units. These guys have the 28 attack, which is very cool. Only 1 area of effect, which is not so very cool. They have the Onin War card, which is very, very cool. The big problem is, why would you ever make Samurai when you have the Ashigaru?
Yep.
As cool as the Samurai is, it's totally outclassed, and that's a big issue. B tier.
Oh, B? Like, alright, I would say D precisely for what you said about the Ashigaru Musketeer. Like, I don't ever see a moment I want to make these guys because Ashigaru Musketeers exist. If I see a mass of 45 Cuirassiers, Ashigaru, we're not going to do the trick. That's the only thing. All right, I guess that's a reason. B seems incredibly high for that unit, but it is better than the Incan Mason.
I'm being generous. I will say that.
Fair enough.
And also because I feel bad for the B tier, because it's like the smallest thing. And it should be the largest. And also, we got to at least rate it higher than the Swedish Pike,
I mean, yeah, let's not delay your video any further.
Yeah. Hospitallers, I think, are the highest rated of these 3. Because they actually have some niche use that isn't covered by the Sentinel. For one thing, they are also the cheapest tier, being 120 food and 80 coin, meaning they are the same price as the Hussar, except, surprise, they're actually cheaper than Malta's Hussars, because Malta's Hussars are more expensive than Ronald Hussars. Fuck you, game. Until you summon the Auberg's card, that is. But it's kind of cool that you can make that you can make a Hussar Sentinel combination on the exact same macro, because they cost the exact same proportion of resources. Although, fun fact, it also shares the exact same proportion of resources with the Sentinel, because they cost 60-40, exactly half that, which is kind of cool.
Per population, yeah.
No, they're both 2 pop units.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
The Hospitaller, though, does have some pretty cool use. For one thing, it gets a range attack once you get to H4, but it also has a very specific use case that the Dop and the Samurai do not have, and that is the deflection aura. You can make like 3 of these guys, just 3 of them, and put them in the back of any mass and give that mass of units a temporary 25% damage resistance to all damage types, because 25% of any damage they take is going to be rerouted to the Hospitallers sitting in the back, which are, by the way, the tankiest of these 3 units, sitting at 250 health, compared it to, I think, 200 and 230. And then these guys also get extra HP with every card you send. 5 HP per card you send, to be exact, which is quite solid. So I put the Hospitaller in A tier.
Yes, agreed.
They have the lower attack of the Dop and the lower area of effect of the Samurai. Doesn't matter. They're still better.
I mean, melee infantry, you mainly use them for their utility, and these guys is basically a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, these guys have a utility that nobody else has.
So yeah, I completely agreed. And it pairs so well with the crossbow mass. Like, crossbow mass already unkillable, give it 25% range resistance, you make people wage crit, that's so fun.
Mm-hmm. Skull Knights are a weird case. Did you get them from your age up? Did you ship a mass of them right on your opponent? Did you fast industrial and make a ship metric fuck ton of these guys as a horde and send the card that gives them extra movement speed? Good news, your unit is broken. Did you do anything else and try to make these guys a supplement? Bad news, your unit is ass and it goes in the D tier. But because it can be broken under some circumstances, I'm gonna put it in the B and be generous.
Yep, Feast of Famine unit. Take them by surprise, they spin to win, and you see units flying around. It's so fun. Like, take your bag of popcorn and enjoy the show. Have someone that knows to use skirmishing and has counter-infantry rifling. Well, you can just resign right now.
Yeah. Wall of Skulls is also a great new addition to the Aztec cards for Skull Knights. That's amazing.
And insane value.
Mm-hmm. Alright, Jaguar Prowler Knights. These guys are ass. These guys used to be more expensive, but they also used to be good, and now they are less expensive, but they are no longer good.
Burn! The burn! Yeah, it's the Skull Knight, except there's no feast, there's just a famine pot.
So these guys have these guys have age 3 base stats and 210 base HP. Which is really cool. It's the same as the fucking Janissary, but an age later. They have a ton of combat cards, actually. They have 30% in support cards, plus another 15% for 45% total from their support. Which is kind of funny, because it still doesn't make them good. But these guys, age 3, have 16 hand attack, which is not high enough for a hand infantry unit. Especially one that only has a 2x multiplier against cavalry. They perform worse than halberdiers against cavalry. The only thing that they have going for them is that they are supposed to actually be a anti-heavy infantry unit, which is kind of cool, because they're supposed to beat every other one of these units. Except that they actually lose to every musketeer unit in the goddamn game because they don't have any range and because stealth got nerfed so that they get found before they can close in. So there's no reason to ever train these guys. There are some niche case uses, and I'm going to get comments saying the Jaguar Prowler Knight's actually pretty good. No, it's not. There are so many better units. Just make Autontons. They cost coin now after you send the Aztec card, the Aztec mining card. D, maybe C. I don't know. Which would you put them?
D, honestly.
Yeah.
I'd put them in D. I will say one thing. The day they will change the Aztec roster to make this guy viable, Aztec will be the funniest civ in the game to play.
I agree.
And that's really easy. You add a negative multipliers to the ERK and to the Arrow Knight, and you force people to make Jaguar Prowler Knight to cover these 2 guys, and you'll have a super funny roster to have. But
that may just infuriate Aztec main, so I will just shut my mouth.
Yeah, you better shut your mouth. I'm an Aztec main here. Insurgentes! These guys are like Strelets, but better. Except in some departments. They don't scale into the 4th and 5th age, which really sucks. They have a lot of upgrade cards, though. They're really fast, but the reason I say they're like Strelets, but better, is because you can train them in batches of 10, but unlike Strelets, you don't have to afford the whole thing before you start training. You can batch train them from 1 to 10 as you please. They are also only food costing units. I really like these guys. You can make a pretty fun rush with them. Now, if you're not careful, your whole mass can die in seconds because they are weak as shit. They do have a really funny siege animation, though, it's only 1.5 speed instead of 3, so they have a really impressive siege attack that looks like it's really ass, but that's just kind of comical more than anything else. I'm putting it in the B tier.
Alright. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to delay. In my humble opinion, this would be the only melee infantry unit that is in S tier. And the reason why is you get a 5.5 speed unit that can siege stuff, go away, that is absolutely expendable, you don't really care for it, that can raid villages, that is only reachable by the one thing it counters, that can even counter skirmishes in melee because they have melee resistance, skirmishes don't. And they have pretty decent base attack at 10 when the pikeman is 8. So you have all of this thing, and they cost 65 food, which is nothing in a train of batches of 10, because Mexico really needed another unit. That was good.
I'll put them at the top.
It's insane. All right.
The thing is, I've lost to Insurgente rushes, but then I learned how to fight them, and I went against a guy who made like 150 Insurgentes, and I have a very funny clip on my YouTube channel of all of them dying in about 2 seconds flat.
All right.
And, 65 food is nothing, but when you're making a batch of 10 of them, you suddenly realize that you just spent 650 food for a batch of units that's going to die very quickly. And you run out of hunts very, very fast with when you're making these guys.
That is true. You can card them, though. You can go to Yucatan Revolt that allows you to get I think it's 200 of those guys with a card. You can give them a range attack. You can give them a lasso that snares from a distance. There is so much stuff you can do because, of course, you're in Mexico, and yeah, to me, it's like a super broken unit that should be nerfed, but to each their own.
Alright, Papal Guards. Actually, let's talk about Rods first. Rodilleros are like the premier heavy infantry for Spain. They're A tier. 40% range res. They got 6 movement speed.
Melee.
40% melee res, 6 movement speed, anti-cavalry multipliers. They pair well with your lancers and hussars, which is where all your cards are. They're great. There isn't anything else to say.
Great utility. That's what you want in your hand infantry unit.
Better than the Musketeer.
Yes.
Alright, Papal Guards. This unit is interesting. It is one of the core. This is one of the core papal units that exist for Italy that you can get through your basilica. You can get them in Age 2. They are one of the 2 core banner armies that are available in Age 2. They shadow tech in every age. They get 2 charged actions. They start out with 1 that's just a longer range attack, and then they get a charged pistol attack once it gets Age 4, which is kind of cool. You also get them in batches of 7, which is quite nice and quite large considering the other papal armies that you get. However, there's a problem with these guys, and that's that they're paired, and that's that anytime you could get these guys, you could also get the Schiavone, which I really like. And I do, that's a matter of what your opponent decides to build, but then the much bigger issue is that as soon as you get to Age 3, you're not going to be worrying about these guys because you're going to put all of your resources into making Papal Lancers instead. on all of your Basilica shipments. And then once you get to age 4, that's going to continue with the Papal Lancers, or you're going to make Papal Zouave, and then this guy will just be a thing of the past. Like, they are useless they're useless in age 2, and even then they have to compete against the Schivone. And it's not like the Musketeer isn't a bad unit for anti-cavalry anyways. So, C tier.
Agreed. It's really outclassed.
But C tier.
Maybe. They have one good shipment in each 4 with 3 Papal Bombards that really enables some FIs, so I guess it's true.
Alright, now let's talk about the 2 best pike units in the game. The Plume Spearman is a very solid, very good B-tier unit. This is the epitome of does its job extremely well but isn't exceptional. This unit is like the beefiest fucking pike unit in the game. They are available in age 2. They have all the benefits of pike and halberdiers, but they also are available in age 2, and they have 5 movement speed unlike halberdiers, but they're almost just tanky. Like, these guys are great. I cannot express that enough. It's as simple as that. There's nothing else to say. They have an attack speed boost, actually, with their support card, which is pretty cool.
Yes. Really high DPS against Cav, really high HP. You want to have this composition of jungle bowmen and pikes, so this unit is high tier also because the jungle bowman is a good skirmisher.
Yeah, and they share almost an identical cost.
Yep. It does hurt to see them above the Insurgente, but again, I have my own bias on the Insurgente. So, yeah, I think it's fair enough. B tier, and you could even consider sometimes very low A, given the Incan roster. But compared with the other, I would agree with the B.
All right, and lastly is the Puma Spearman, who I will surprise you by giving the highest ranking of all melee infantry, which I'm going to put right about here. I'm waiting for your objection.
No. I completely agree.
Oh, okay.
Because it's... I mean, this is a unit you want with Aztec, not because it's a heavy infantry unit, it's because it's a siege unit.
Well, not even that necessarily. Allow me to gush about this unit for a little bit. Alright, so, because I am an Aztec main, and I have recently enlightened to the beauty that is the Puma Spearman. So let us not even mention the fact that the Puma Spearman has the highest siege of any pike unit in the game at a base of 41. 41 siege! Which is insane. So good. Let us not even mention that it is a food coin unit, making it easier to afford in the late game. Let's not even mention that it just has slightly higher HP for no reason at all compared to a normal pikeman of 125 compared to 120, which isn't that big of a deal. But its base attack is 12, right? But it still maintains a 5 times multiplier like a normal pikeman, but it has 50% more attack, meaning that this thing's base attack in age 2 is the equivalent of a guard upgrade pikeman. Most civilizations can't even upgrade pikes to guard level. These guys do most musketeers and pikemen do 40 damage to cavalry. These guys do 60. They fucking shred any cavalry that comes even remotely close to them. And then I hear you saying, but wait, all the cavalry has to do is not be remotely close to them. Well, haha, joke's on you, good sir. By the time they get to age 3 and, casually go from 12 to 15 attack with still a 5 times multiplier, which is really, really funny, they get a speed boost card of 20%. Just real casually giving them a 20% boost, giving them 6 speed, which importantly makes them better at chasing cavalry, and even more importantly, making them fast enough that hussars can't break a snare with them. So, with all that, you have a food coin, higher damage, higher base HP, higher movement speed, higher siege pikeman that does everything that other pikemen do, but really well, and also at a scale where they have enough attack that they can actually do other things. Like, let's be real here, 15 attack in H3 is one less than the fucking Jaguar Prowler!
Superb unit.
Yeah, they have 24 attack in H5 with a 5 times multiplier against Cav.
So the reason why you don't see them as often after H2 is that Aztec have just a better anti-cav unit afterwards, which is the Eagle Runner Knight, which is easily S+ tier Dragoon.
Except that it got nerfed recently. Pretty hardcore.
That is true.
And as such, I have found myself using the Puma Spearman a lot more. And let me tell you, it don't disappoint. It used to be...
no, definitely.
I used to put the Puma Spearman in the B tier. Now I put it in the A tier, and I lower... And I honestly don't think the Eagle Runner Knight is quite as good as it used to be. I think it's also an A tier in my goon list.
Alright.
But, like, the Puma Spearman, man, I fucking love this guy. I love this guy. He can fight musketeers. He can fight skirmishers to a degree if you have enough of them. He just shreds cavalry, and he does it really well. He also has the best fashion of any spearman in the game, bar none. Once you get to H4, you get, like, the coolest pike model ever. Like, straight up.
Oh, yeah, with the hat.
Yeah. It is, like, straight up, like, the coolest model. And, like, yeah, these guys shred. These guys shred to anything they touch to pieces. Oh, any cavalry they touch to pieces. I have a game that I did with Aztecs recently where I was doing my Fenarian boom, which the Fenarian boom uses these guys a lot, by the way. And the Fenarian boom is really when I started to, like, appreciate how good this unit is. When, the opponent ran, like, some dragoons up to some artillery, and I moved the Puma Spearmen to defend the artillery, and it was like watching Dops. It was like watching Dops fight Cossacks. It was just blue numbers everywhere in the blink of an eye. I love this unit.
Excellent unit. I completely agree with that.
Alright, that's our tier lists. Yay, we did it! It took us almost 3 hours. I really hope I have space.
There's a lot of units, though.
It's the biggest tier list. It's the finale. It's the one that always gets the most views, too.
And the most negative comments, I guess.
Yes, the most negative comments. Do you agree with our list? Do you disagree? I'm sure you do somewhere. What do you think about the Azap? Do you see anything? Do you have any last-minute changes that you want to make to this list? Besides Insurgente being S, which I refuse. I veto.
Not really. I think it's fine. I really look forward to feeling your hate, Ottoman mains, about the ASAP. I want to feel it in my bones. I want to get power from your anger, please.
Alright, now here's fingers crossed, hoping that my recording didn't suffer. Have a great day and goodbye.
Still my heart beats again and again. I'm always searching for a love with no sense within my head. Till that day when I see that I met the most amazing demon ever yet.